On the second day after my fiancé ran away from our wedding in public, I took a plane to Shanghai. He comforted his girlfriend by saying, "Claire has been spoiled since childhood. She'll come back on her own after making a fuss for a couple of days. You don't need to blame yourself." All my friends were afraid that I would still pester Morgan and make a huge scene again. However, they didn't know that I had already accepted someone else's proposal. This time, I was flying to Shanghai to get married. As the wedding date was approaching, I sent back all the things that Morgan had given me over the years without missing a single one, including that love token necklace which I cherished as a treasure. "From now on, like the flowing river that never stops, I will part with you forever." The scene of Morgan running away from our wedding in public still makes me feel embarrassed whenever I think of it. The banquet hall was full of guests, yet it was completely silent. The air seemed to freeze, and even the sound of breathing could be clearly heard. After a long while, Selina, who was tightly held by him, finally spoke cautiously, "Morgan, don't be like this. Claire is still young." "Young? She's almost 26, isn't she?" A sarcastic whisper came from the corner. The continuous whispers made the atmosphere even more solemn. I stubbornly grabbed the corner of Morgan's clothes, unwilling to believe the truth, but when I looked at Morgan, my eyes were already wet. "Claire, why do you make me say such harsh words?" Morgan put down his champagne and slowly stood up. "I've told you many times that we are just the result of a family alliance. I don't love you and will never love you." I choked back my sobs and retorted, "Then why didn't you allow me to fall in love with others?" "Because you are my nominal fiancé. If you got involved in those messy affairs, it would be a disgrace to both the Claire family and the Morgan family." "Then why did you kiss me on the night of my graduation ceremony?" A trace of annoyance flashed across Morgan's eyes. "That was because you were drunk and crazy and threw yourself at me." Suddenly, I smiled, but tears couldn't stop streaming down my face. "But in these years, there has never been another woman beside you except me. Don't you have any feelings for me at all?" "That's because I haven't met the girl I really like yet." Morgan put his arm around Selina's shoulders. "I'm telling you for the last time. Listen carefully. I like Selina and will marry her. All those tricks of yours won't work this time." Selina snuggled up in his arms and said, "Morgan." Morgan lowered his head and kissed her. Selina put her arms around his neck and responded passionately. At my engagement ceremony, he was being affectionate with another woman in front of everyone without any scruples. At that moment, I remembered the kiss on the night of my graduation ceremony. It was equally lingering and affectionate. It made me indulge in a beautiful dream for 4 years. I stupidly believed that he had feelings for me in his heart. Morgan moved out of the old house of the Morgan family. He moved into a luxury house with a river view together with Selina. On the day he moved, he specifically asked other friends not to tell me, probably because he was afraid that I would go and make a scene again. This time, I didn't impulsively run downstairs to his company and cry bitterly. I just felt a pang of sadness in my heart, and then forced myself to forget all about it. In the evening, I was having dinner with several friends nearby. When I was paying the bill, I met Selina. "Claire, Morgan is also here. Do you want to go over and say hello?" I gently waved my hand and said, "Sorry, I've already made an appointment with my friends, so I won't go there." Suddenly, Selina's eyes became teary. "Claire, I know that my family background is not as good as yours. But could you please stop talking bad about me in front of them?" I looked at her in disbelief and said, "Selina, I've never talked about you in front of the elders." Selina was in tears. "I understand. You are Morgan's fiancé since childhood and have always been deeply in love with him. It's normal that you can't accept our relationship for a while, but Claire, as girls, isn't it good to learn to let go and help others fulfill their wishes?" I've always been straightforward and don't know how to beat around the bush. Hearing these words, I immediately got angry. "Selina, please don't talk nonsense here." Before I could finish my words, Selina suddenly felt weak and fell to her knees. "Claire, I'm really begging you." I was startled and quickly reached out to help her, but before my hand touched her, she fell backwards. "Claire, what are you doing?" Morgan's furious voice came from behind. A huge force pushed me away violently. My arm hit the iron railing heavily, and the sharp pain spread throughout my body instantly. Morgan, let me explain. It's just a misunderstanding. How dare you quibble? How long have you been playing these tricks? Morgan took Selena into his arms at once. He stared at me with sharp eyes, as if he wanted to pierce through me. Claire, apologize to her immediately. Morgan, shut up and apologize right now. Selena was trembling slightly in his arms, with tears silently falling down, looking pitiful. My arm was already bruised and purple, the blood congestion could be vaguely seen spreading under the skin. The scar was shocking, but Morgan didn't even look at it. The way he looked at me was as if I were an extremely evil sinner. I raised the corners of my mouth with a bitter smile and didn't want to say another word. I'm sorry. Morgan seemed to be stunned for a moment, but then his eyes became even sharper. It's not sincere enough. I straightened my back and bowed deeply. Is this okay? Selena looked at me, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. Then she quickly turned to sobbing and said to Morgan, forget it, Morgan. How dare I accept such an apology? Morgan's expression instantly became gentle. Claire, I've said it before. Selena is different from others. If you bully her like this, it will only make me dislike you more, and it will make me love her more. He put his arm around Selena and turned around to leave. I stood there alone, not knowing how long it had been. The pain in my arm was as unbearable as being pricked by needles, but my heart was surprisingly calm. I finally understood. At this moment, all those childish and infatuated fantasies of my youth had vanished like bubbles. They disappeared completely. That night, Morgan posted several WeChat moments one after another. People in our circle immediately sent me screenshots, especially Morgan's captions were highlighted. I knew their intentions very well. In the past, whenever this happened, I would impulsively go to Morgan and have a big quarrel with him. Although he was always impatient, he would finally give in. This made me mistakenly think that he actually cared about me. It also made me less and less know how to stop at the right time. This time, I chose to be silent. Instead, I dialed the missed call from a week ago. Henry, this is Claire. I've thought it over about what you mentioned last time. When I was 13 years old, my parents died in an accident. Because our family was a longtime friend of the Morgan family and we lived close to each other, I moved into the Morgan family. Until Auntie called. Auntie was my mother's best friend when she was young, but later she left for love and lost contact. By the time she settled down in Beijing, my parents had already passed away. Auntie hoped that I would go to live in Beijing. She also wanted to fulfill the promise she made with my mother when they were young. She wanted me to marry her son and become the daughter-in-law of the Henry family. A week ago, I didn't agree immediately. But I couldn't bear to refuse, so I just said that I needed time to think about it. But just tonight, I suddenly realized how obsessed and wrong-headed I had been all these years. The one-sided love was really ridiculous. I didn't want to be the topic of others' gossip anymore. Half a year ago, Morgan wanted to break off our engagement. I was reluctant to do so at that time and cried several times. But he never changed his mind. Now thinking about it, perhaps this was the best arrangement. Maybe there is destiny in everything. On the other end of the phone, Auntie said happily, Claire, Yanzhou has been waiting for your reply. He's going to fly to Beijing to propose to you soon. I held my mobile phone and suddenly felt my cheeks burning. The laughter coming from my ear made me feel a bit lost. The person I had a crush on for 10 years. I didn't expect that it only took me 7 short days to truly let go. Morgan and Selena chose the day when I went to Beijing to get engaged. So not many people came to see me off. After I landed, I turned on my mobile phone. The notification sounds kept ringing. Most of them were about Morgan and Selena's engagement. I smiled and blocked all these people. Before going to Beijing, I met Henry. I didn't want to be too ostentatious or cause any gossip. Henry fully understood my thoughts. He proposed to me and we exchanged rings. So we got engaged in a simple way. There was an extra 100 million yuan in my account as the betrothal gift. And I had an extra simple diamond ring on my hand. Just as I was about to get into the car of the Henry family, my mobile phone suddenly rang. It was Lucy, Morgan's cousin. Claire, my brother's engagement ceremony is about to start. Where are you? I've just arrived in Shanghai. Come back quickly. There's still time. What's the point of going back? I said calmly. Lucy was at a loss for words for a moment. Are you out of your mind? If you don't come back and make a scene, my brother will really belong to someone else. Isn't this your brother's big event? Why should I make a scene, Claire? Lucy's voice suddenly rose. Are you crazy? I was about to hang up when Selena's voice came from the other end of the phone. Claire, won't you come to attend my and Morgan's engagement ceremony? Although you are Morgan's former fiancé, Morgan has always regarded you as his sister. As your prospective sister-in-law, I hope to receive your blessings. I looked up at the figure in the distance. He was leaning against a luxury car, with gentle eyes and eyebrows. Suddenly, my heart calmed down. Sure. I wish you a long and happy marriage and eternal love. Morgan was drinking wine on the terrace with several friends. His eyes would glance at Lucy and her group from time to time. He knew them very well. They were reporting to Claire again, just like countless times before. Whenever there was a girl beside him, they would immediately tell Claire. Then Claire would come and make a big fuss. He hated this kind of pestering most. Gradually, he cut off contact with those female companions. This time, it was supposed to be no exception. So he deliberately chose the day when Claire went to Shanghai. It was just a bit unlucky that the engagement ceremony was scheduled for 7 o'clock in the evening. Morgan was a bit worried. After all, Claire booked a plane ticket immediately after getting the news and could just catch up with the start of the engagement ceremony. Morgan, what if Claire comes back to make trouble? Yes, she's your former fiancé. Knowing that you're with someone else, she'll definitely go crazy. But she seems quite calm recently. You ran away from the wedding for Selena, but she didn't react at all. In the past, she would have been crying and screaming. Morgan stopped his wine glass in midair. He forgot to take a sip. All he could think of was the last sentence his friend said. Claire had been really quiet recently, so quiet that it didn't seem like her at all. Based on his understanding of her, she was never this kind of person. Over the years, he had rejected her countless times. But she had never given up and had always been more courageous after each setback. Now that she was older, she was more composed than before. So Morgan suddenly thought of something. He smiled slightly and put down his glass. Just wait and see. She's never been a docile one. Morgan, are you saying that Claire will come back to make trouble? Morgan didn't answer. But he was already certain in his heart, this girl had always been an emotional one since childhood. When she was in adolescence, she was crazy about idol dramas. She had tried many childish tricks on him. He knew it all too well. This period of calm was just a ploy of playing hard to get. He dared to bet that Claire would definitely show up by the start of the engagement ceremony at the latest. Strengthen the security guards. Morgan looked at his watch. Don't let irrelevant people come in and make trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Lucy running over in a hurry. Brother, Claire's here. Her car has already reached the gate. Morgan's heart skipped a beat inexplicably, and then his face darkened. Really incorrigible, and still coming here to make trouble. Brother, what should we do now? If she makes a scene, the face of our Morgan family. Morgan's face was gloomy as he strode out. I'll go and see what tricks she can play. Everyone followed him out. Just as they stepped out onto the terrace, Selena softly called out to him. Morgan. Selena was wearing a champagne-colored dress. Her hairstyle was exquisite and elegant, and her makeup was fresh and light. The engagement ceremony was at 7 o'clock. There were still a few hours left. Selena was anxious inside, but she looked calm on the surface. Why are you here? Morgan stopped in his tracks. His gaze fell on Selena's face. Selena was very beautiful. She had a gentle beauty that made people want to cherish her. It was completely different from Claire's willful and flamboyant nature. Because of her poor family background, Selena was a bit timid in character. She always spoke with a bit of caution. During the most irritable days of his life, when he was being pestered by Claire and feeling annoyed, he was easily touched by Selena's gentleness. Moreover, unlike the previous girlfriends who took the initiative to get close to him, his acquaintance with Selena originated from an incident of rescuing a woman from distress. All men have a hero complex. His feelings for Selena were completely different from those casual relationships in the past. I heard that Claire is back. Before Selena could finish her sentence, her eyes turned red. I'm a bit worried. Selena bit her lip and lowered her head. Morgan, will we be unable to complete the engagement ceremony today? Don't overthink it. Morgan held Selena's shoulders and gently comforted her. I'll go and deal with it right away. However, Selena grabbed the sleeve of his clothes. Morgan, I'm scared. I'm afraid you'll regret canceling the engagement with her. Selena's tears fell like rain. She was petite and frail, standing there as if she could break at any moment. Don't worry, Sister Selena. My brother has never been attracted to Claire. Lucy had a smug smile in her eyes. She's just a spoiled young lady who throws tantrums at the slightest provocation. My brother has had enough of her. She won't succeed. Lucy had never hidden her dislike for her. Since that girl had an engagement with her brother, her parents, who used to dote on her, had been treating that girl like a treasure. Although they always said that the girl would be her future sister-in-law and the Morgan family was nice to her just for the sake of face, Lucy just couldn't stand her. Over the years, her greatest pleasure had been watching that girl make a fool of herself. Now that the person had been publicly jilted and left Huicheng alone in disgrace, Lucy was feeling extremely happy. Anyway, she would support anyone to be her sister-in-law, except that person. Morgan suddenly looked at Lucy. Didn't you always have a good relationship with her? How could I have a good relationship with her? I couldn't wait for you two to break off the engagement earlier. At this point, Lucy didn't bother to pretend anymore. In the past, she deliberately showed kindness just to win her trust so that she would listen to her and do some annoying things. Now that she didn't have to pretend anymore, it was really relaxing. Lucy didn't notice the change in Morgan's expression. She continued, Brother, how about this? You stay with sister-in-law, and I'll go and send her away. Don't worry. I'll definitely make her lose face. What are you planning to do? Ask the security guards to kick her out. The spirits of her parents in heaven will be brought back to life by her actions. Before she could finish speaking, a clear slap echoed through the hall. Everyone was stunned, especially Selena. She frowned tightly, and her eyes looking at Morgan gradually darkened. Brother, why did you hit me? Lucy covered her face and cried bitterly. She used to be my nominal fiancé. You should also respect her. Morgan's expression was terribly gloomy. She's been carrying the title of my fiancé for so many years. If you humiliate her like this, where will the face of the Morgan family be? Why are you speaking up for her? Aren't you the one who hates her the most? Lucy cried pitifully. If you hadn't taken the lead in hating her, how could we be like this? He was silent and didn't say a word for a long time. Did he really dislike her as they said? But clearly, when he first met that girl, their relationship was the closest. When she fell, he carried her to the hospital. When she was bullied, he was the first to rush to the scene and stand up for her. Even when she had her first period, he went to buy necessities for her overnight. She regarded him as her support. When she grew up, she regarded him as her whole world. In fact, he liked her dependence very much. When did it start to change? Morgan suddenly felt lost inside. And Selena's sobbing pulled his thoughts back to reality. Right, it was she who changed first. After growing up, she was spoiled by her family and became extremely willful. She was domineering and autocratic. She didn't allow him to associate with any other girls. She threw tantrums at the slightest provocation. So, he became more and more annoyed and distanced himself from her. He even insisted on sending her to study in Huicheng despite her crying and begging to stay. He did this, just hoping that she could grow up and become sensible. When she got rid of her bad temper, he would go and pick her up. With so many years of feelings, how could he really let go and let her drift alone in a foreign land? But now it seemed she still hadn't made any progress at all. She actually dared to be willful and reckless on such an important occasion. She was really something. As soon as she arrived, she turned the Morgan family upside down. Morgan took Selena into his arms. Go and touch up your makeup first. Let the makeup artist do it again for you. I'll come to you after I've arranged things here. The engagement ceremony will start on time. Don't worry. Morgan wiped away Selena's tears before turning around and leaving. Selena stood there, looking at Morgan's back. For some reason, she always had a sense of uneasiness in her heart. Lucy was right just now. Everyone knew that he was cold towards her. But he slapped his own cousin just because of a few words. Did he really dislike her? Or rather, was she always special in his heart? Morgan walked to the gate. He didn't see anyone. He only saw the pink BMW parked there, and standing beside the car was her best friend. Morgan's steps suddenly stopped. It felt as if his heart had been pulled by something and sank slightly. Only then did he remember. This car had been given to her friend by her before she left Jingbei. When the other person saw him, she immediately walked over. Morgan saw that she was holding a red envelope in her hand. She had a cold expression and got straight to the point. She asked me to give you and Selena this red envelope. Morgan didn't reach out his hand. She frowned. There's one more thing. Go ahead. She left in a hurry and never had a chance to see you. I've tried to contact you many times, but couldn't get through. So I never had a chance to ask you to return this thing. Remember that year when you celebrated your birthday, she gave you a ring. That's a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother, Luna said with an unfriendly look. Claire told me that this ring was meant for her future husband. It's not appropriate for it to still be in your hands now. Could you please give the ring to me? When I go to Huicheng to see Claire, I'll give it to her. Morgan suddenly looked down. His gaze fell on the low-key and restrained ring on his ring finger. This morning when he was changing clothes, he put on this ring for some strange reason. In fact, it didn't match his suit at all, but he didn't take it off. Only now, looking at this ring again, he just felt it was an eyesore meant for her future husband. He felt inexplicably irritable inside. At the thought that Claire would spend the rest of her life with someone else in the future, accompanying each other day and night and helping each other through difficulties, an indescribable discomfort rose in his chest. She had loved him so deeply before. How could she marry someone else? Now she was avoiding seeing him and sent Luna to ask for it. She was really smart. Admittedly, this move really messed up his state of mind. Morgan? Tell Claire for me. I never take back the things I've given away. Of course, if she insists, she might as well come and talk to me in person. After Morgan finished speaking, he turned around to leave. Luna hurriedly called out to him. Morgan, wait a moment. I'll let Claire talk to you right now. Are you kidding? Claire was about to get married. How could such a ring with special significance remain in someone else's hands? Claire had repeatedly told her she must get the ring back before the wedding. She wanted to put it on her husband's hand herself at the wedding. Over the years, Luna's dislike for Morgan had been growing day by day, but Claire was just too infatuated, which was simply unreasonable. She had wasted her youth waiting for him, only to be ruthlessly abandoned in the end. Every time Luna thought about it, she couldn't wait to slap Morgan twice. Fortunately, now she had finally seen the reality, and she had also met a better match. Luna was sincerely happy for her friend. This time, she must fulfill the task entrusted to her. When I received Luna's call, the car was almost at the Henry family's place. Luna, what's going on? Claire, I went to ask Morgan for the ring as you told me to, but he wouldn't give it to me. He also said that if you insisted, you had to come and talk to him in person. I involuntarily glanced at Henry beside me. I felt a bit nervous inside. I was still quite unfamiliar with him, although he looked gentle and polite. His aura was so powerful that it couldn't be ignored. Just now, he answered a work call in the car. He switched between 3 languages with ease and gave instructions neatly and quickly. That kind of innate noble temperament made me look childish and simple. Actually, I'm not a quiet person, but in front of Henry, I somehow became restrained. Before I could reply to Luna, Morgan's voice came from the other end of the phone. Claire, do you really want the ring back, or do you have other motives? I was stunned for a moment, and then I was both angry and amused. If you want to ruin my engagement ceremony with Selena, then I advise you not to waste your efforts. If you want the ring, then take it back the same way you gave it to me. After all, such a precious item shouldn't be retrieved through someone else. I took a deep breath and tried to make my tone calm. Luna is my closest friend. Just give it to her. I'll take all the responsibility. Morgan chuckled at Claire. Do you want me to be more straightforward? Give it back the same way you gave it to me. The call ended abruptly. I was both angry and ashamed, and my cheeks flushed. How did I give him the ring? It was on the day of my graduation ceremony. I summoned up my courage and kissed him under the cherry tree on campus. That was the first time I took the initiative to kiss someone. He seemed a bit surprised, but he didn't push me away. At that moment, I thought I had finally waited for the right moment. Trembling, I took out the ring from my pocket. I gently placed it in his palm. I told him the meaning of the ring. He was silent for a moment and finally accepted it. That's why I thought he had tacitly consented to and accepted my love. These past few years had been like a bad dream. Now that the dream was over, I just wanted to settle accounts with the past. I thought Morgan would be eager to give the ring back to me like throwing away garbage. I never expected that he would say something like this. It was only at this moment that I realized belatedly, the impulsiveness of my youth would eventually come at a price. If the ring didn't have that meaning, I wouldn't have asked for it back at all, but I was about to get married. If the ring continued to stay with Morgan, it would be too unfair to Henry. What's the trouble? Henry suddenly spoke. I couldn't help but look up. I met his deep gaze. An indescribable sense of embarrassment welled up in my heart. I didn't want to hide anything, but our relationship was still shallow at the moment, and it was really hard to talk about it. Nothing. I shook my head gently. I was thinking to myself that even if I had to ask Morgan's father for help, I would get the things back. Having made up my mind, I gradually relaxed. It's nothing serious. There are just some trifles to deal with at the Morgan family's side. I forced a smile and said to Henry casually. I can handle it myself. Henry just nodded slightly. All right. If you encounter something you can't solve, Claire, don't hesitate to ask for help. After all, you will be my wife soon. He said it so naturally. It wasn't the first time he had called me by such an affectionate name, but I still felt my ears getting hot. Especially when I heard the word wife, even my neck started to feel warm. Our engagement had already been settled. In half a month, I would marry him. I had mixed feelings in my heart, yet there was also a faint trace of expectation and sweetness. I didn't dare to look straight into his eyes. I stole a glance at him and replied softly. Henry didn't say anything more. The car stopped in front of the Henry family's villa. He got out of the car first. Then he walked around to my side and opened the door for me. I noticed that the diamond ring on the ring finger of his left hand was shimmering slightly. Since he put it on at the engagement ceremony that day, he had never taken it off. He gently helped me out of the car. When I stood firmly, he still held my hand instead of letting go. Instead, our fingers intertwined naturally. At first, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but the warmth of his palm was reassuring. His slender fingers gently clasped my hand, and I gradually relaxed. It seemed that all of this was the most natural thing in the world. In the distance, Aunt Jo saw us walking hand in hand and immediately broke into a gratified smile. She walked quickly towards us. Before we got close, Aunt Jo hugged me tightly, and tears welled up in her eyes. Claire, you really look like your mother when she was young. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore, and they burst out like a flood. The familiar fragrance on her body reminded me of the smell of my mother in my hazy memories. Henry stood aside and shook his head helplessly. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it over. Auntie, don't cry bitterly while hugging Claire. People outside will think we're bullying you too. Aunt Jo stopped crying and smiled, then helped me dry my tears. Only then did she hold my hand tightly. Claire, come home with Auntie. My eyes involuntarily turned to Henry. He was also looking at me. Behind us were lush green trees. When I looked over, there was a gentle smile in Henry's eyes. He also extended his hand to me. Claire, let's go home. There were still 20 minutes left until 7 o'clock. Selena had already finished her entire look. But Morgan was still staying in the lounge upstairs. Selena hesitated for a while and then decided to go upstairs to check. The door of the lounge was slightly ajar, so voices came from inside. Selena walked quietly closer. Morgan, is Claire really not coming? It's too late for her to come now. Morgan, I've always wanted to ask you, what exactly are your feelings for Claire? You grew up together. She's so beautiful and innocent and devoted to you. Selena unconsciously held her breath. There was a long silence in the room. Then Morgan slowly said, "I don't have any feelings. I've been forced to be engaged since I was a child, and I'm already fed up with it." Morgan sneered. He was 3 years older than Claire. When the two families arranged the engagement, she was just in junior high school. Even though Claire grew up to be a graceful young lady later, Morgan remembered the night of her graduation ceremony. He must have been crazy. That's why he couldn't help kissing her soft lips and accepted the ring she gave him, but Claire is really outstanding now. Yes, many people in the circle want to court her. Remember the charity dinner last month? Of course I remember. She wore a sapphire blue evening dress and danced the opening dance. The way her dress fluttered when she twirled was really captivating. Morgan certainly remembered. Claire was extremely happy that night. She kept pulling him and talking nonstop, showing off the new dance steps she had learned. Suddenly, Selena pushed the door open. Morgan. She was wearing a champagne-colored lace dress. This dress was customized according to an old photo of Mrs. Gu. Mrs. Gu came from an ordinary family. To earn the life-saving money for her father's medical treatment, she worked in a bar. She was rescued by Morgan in an accident that year. This beautiful story is still being told to this day. What Morgan was most proud of was his parents' love. Perhaps because of this, after rescuing Selena, he developed a good impression of her. At this moment, Selena was standing in front of him. She was as elegant and charming as his mother when she was young. Although he had never thought of getting to this point with Selena, but today he would at least give her a perfect engagement ceremony. Morgan stood up and extended his hand to Selena. A gentle smile appeared on Selena's lips, and she walked slowly towards him. "You hadn't come downstairs, and I was really worried." "It's nothing. Let's go now." "Has everything been arranged for Claire's side?" "Yes." Morgan's eyes fell on the watch on his wrist. "Claire is too headstrong. You can't handle her. Let her stay in Who City in the future and don't let her come back." Selena felt a burst of joy in her heart. On the surface, she pretended to be worried. Isn't that a bit inappropriate? Claire has been pampered since she was a child. Will she be wronged if she stays outside alone? Morgan said indifferently, "She'll become sensible after suffering a bit." Selena didn't say anything more. She obediently took his arm and went downstairs. It was 7 o'clock sharp. Her engagement ceremony was about to begin. From now on, she would never have to live that kind of poor life again. She would never have to live in a shabby old neighborhood again. She would never have to squeeze into a small room with her two younger brothers again. Her family would all thrive because of her. Morgan was the only chance given by heaven for her to change her fate. She would hold on to him tightly forever. She would never let go. My wedding date with Henry was set for 2 weeks later. The time was really tight. But the Henry family was extremely meticulous in preparing for this wedding. They had started the preparations many years ago. Although it was busy, the progress was very smooth. "Auntie told me Henry had been seriously ill when he was a child. After he recovered, the Henry family specially invited a master to tell his fortune. The master said that he must get married in June when he was 28 years old. Only in this way would he have a peaceful, smooth life and achieve great success." The people in the Henry family were very superstitious. When Auntie first called to talk about this marriage, the Henry family had already had our birth dates matched. They said that Henry and I were a match made in heaven and it was destined. So after I agreed to this marriage, the whole Henry family was very happy. I received many precious gifts for our first meeting. What touched me the most was an ancestral jade necklace left by Henry's grandmother. When Henry gave it to me, I was both touched and guilty. What I should have given back to him most was the jade thumb ring that my father gave to my mother back then. But now, that jade thumb ring was still in someone else's hands. Probably noticing that I was in low spirits, Henry invited me to the garden. "Claire, are you unhappy?" He looked at me with concern. The necklace on my neck was shining with a warm luster. The value of this necklace was far beyond my imagination. I had always been unable to bear others' kindness. Whenever someone was nice to me, I always wanted to repay them doubly. I carefully thought about the gifts that I could give to Henry and felt that none of them were worthy of him. Already feeling guilty and uncomfortable. Looking into Henry's gentle eyes again. Somehow. When I decided to let go of Morgan, I didn't shed tears. When I left Beijing, where I had lived for more than 20 years, I didn't shed tears. When Morgan refused to return that ring to me, I didn't shed tears either. But at this moment, I couldn't stop my tears from flowing down. Henry was clearly flustered. Although he was an elegant, well-spoken, and well-mannered young master from a wealthy family, he seemed inexperienced in comforting girls. When he wiped my tears with a tissue, his movements were clumsy yet cute. I was crying and laughing at the same time. Henry, you've smeared my makeup. Were you wearing makeup? Can't you tell? Henry said seriously, in my eyes, you've always been so beautiful. I admit that I would be occasionally moved by sweet words. Just like that, I was cheered up by his words. You're so good at talking. You must have dated quite a few girls before, right? Henry was silent for a few seconds. Yes. It's just a pity that she didn't like me. I vaguely understood in my heart. So that's how it was. Perhaps it was just because the person he liked had someone else in her heart that he closed his own heart and agreed to this marriage. Somehow, a trace of sourness suddenly welled up in my heart. But soon I comforted myself. Maybe it was for the best that we both came together with our own regrets. When I was about to leave the Henry family's place, Henry said to me, Claire, I hope you can truly regard me as your future husband. You've always been excellent and capable. But it would make me very happy if you could rely on me once in a while. It seemed that my heart opened slightly at that moment. Henry, I will. I finally gave Henry a delicate ring. It wasn't particularly expensive. But it was designed by me personally. This gift was very pure. These design inspirations came from my longing for my parents. I just missed my parents. I turned my longing into every line on the paper. The preparations for my wedding were in full swing. But the Henry family hadn't announced to the public who the bride was. I had just come to Hu City and didn't want to be too high profile. I still needed to make a clean break with Morgan. I left Hu City in a hurry. The servants at home had almost packed up all my things and shipped them to Hu City, including every token of his affection carefully chosen for me over the years. There was a limited edition gemstone necklace among them. He put it on me with his own hands on my 15th birthday. It was also something I once treasured deeply. In the past, whenever I was in a low mood, seeing this ring would immediately cheer me up. Because gifts that were so close to the body like rings were always especially special. But now I finally understood. When a person has never truly liked you, or when his feelings for you are not pure even if you are his fiancé, it's all in vain. Not to mention these worldly possessions. When I sorted out these gifts one by one, my heart was surprisingly calm like still water. In the end, the jewelry box was empty. But my heart was unprecedentedly relaxed. Just as I was about to pack them up and send them out, my mobile phone suddenly received several WeChat messages. They were messages sent by the staff at the ranch. My little corgi was sick. It was listless all day and refused to eat. The moment I saw the video, my eyes turned red. The staff said that the little corgi must be missing me, because I used to visit it every week. But this time, I hadn't been there for a long time. I immediately called to inquire about the situation. Miss Claire, Morgan happens to be here. Let him talk to you. I was stunned for a moment and Morgan's deep voice had already come through. Claire, have you forgotten what you promised when you got this dog? Of course I remembered. The rule of the Morgan family is that once you choose a pet, you have to take full responsibility for it. You must take good care of it and never give up halfway. However, wasn't it always what you wanted that I left Huicheng? Claire. Morgan sneered. When have you ever been so obedient? Since you were a child, weren't you the one who was best at making a fuss and acting coquettishly? As long as you asked, Mom and Dad would agree to your requests. It seems that you don't care that much about this dog either. At that moment, his heart suddenly panicked. He seemed to hear the subtext in his own words. So she didn't care that much about him after all. Otherwise, she wouldn't have really gone to Huicheng. She wouldn't have been so indifferent to his marriage. She wouldn't have been absent from his engagement ceremony. She wouldn't have insisted that he return that ring. I'll find time to go back and see it. If possible, I can also take it to Huicheng. Are you planning to never return to Jingbei for the rest of your life? His tone gradually became angry, but I chuckled softly. It's not impossible. Yes, I'm going to marry into Huicheng. My future life is destined to be here. But I don't need to tell Morgan about this. Claire, you're still so willful and childish. You haven't changed at all. His voice became even colder. Don't make decisions that you'll regret later. Regret what? I've already engaged myself to Selena. The wedding date will be set soon. And then? Claire, don't tell me you don't understand. If Selena and I get married, I smiled relieved and relaxed. Brother Morgan, I wish you a happy and fulfilling life. On the other end of the phone, Morgan suddenly fell silent. I gently put down my phone and ended the call. When I was 15 years old, I first fell in love. From then on, I couldn't stop loving. I stubbornly stopped calling him brother. Now, in the blink of an eye, many years have passed. After all, he has returned to his original position. I don't hate him or blame him. After so many years of being together day and night, I sincerely wish him happiness. I dialed Morgan's father's phone number. After greeting him and Morgan's mother, I tactfully brought up the matter of the ring. Father Morgan, I'm really sorry that I haven't contacted you before. I've thought a lot during this period and understood many things. Since Brother Morgan has already made his own choice, let the past be the past. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Claire, do you know that all these years, your aunt and I have always regarded you as our own daughter? Morgan is too stubborn. It's our failure in teaching him. You've been wronged. Listening to the familiar voice on the phone, my tears flowed uncontrollably, but I knew that this reluctance was only because of their sincere love for me. Father Morgan, I understand your and aunt's feelings. But when it comes to feelings, you can't force them. I've already let it go. Don't be sad either. All right, I'll ask Morgan to return the ring to you. We'll go to Huicheng to attend a wedding in a few days. I'll give it to you in person then. I thanked him softly and hung up the phone. The staff of the courier company had already arrived. The packaged gifts were loaded onto the truck by the staff. Soon, these things would be back in his hands. In a few more days, Father Morgan and the others would come to Huicheng. When the ring was returned to me, those youthful infatuations and wild fantasies would come to an end. Like this, from then on, we would each rush towards different lives. Morgan got drunk at a business reception. He staggered out of the washroom. He heard Luna on the phone. Great, baby. I'll fly to Huicheng tomorrow. I'm your only bridesmaid. By the way, have you chosen the groomsmen yet? What? You've arranged so many people to accompany me? Honey, you're the best. I love you so much. Morgan stood in the magnificent corridor. Luna's excited voice echoed in his ears. In the end, only that affectionate address remained. He thought he must be really drunk. Otherwise, how could he have heard such an absurd conversation? Yes, he must be drunk. So he was having hallucinations. Perhaps it was just because he missed Claire too much that he had an illusion. Morgan staggered over. Luna. Luna, who had just hung up the phone, was startled. Morgan. Who were you talking to on the phone just now? He stared fixedly at Luna's eyes. I heard you were going to Huicheng for a wedding. Were you talking to her on the phone just now? His handsome face was a bit distorted at the moment. Those usually rebellious eyes were bloodshot. He forced a sneer, which looked extremely hideous. Don't tell me you're going to attend her wedding. Luna was initially scared by him. But she quickly calmed down. Wasn't this just karma? Over the years, she had shed so many tears for her best friend's heartache. At this moment, she felt so relieved. The young master of the Morgan family, who was always so high and mighty, had his day too. Wasn't he the best at playing with other people's feelings? Didn't he like watching those who loved him suffer and struggle the most? From now on, he would have plenty of opportunities to taste this kind of feeling slowly, but Luna wouldn't tell him the truth. Since Claire didn't want her to tell, she would never tell. She wasn't stupid enough to let Morgan know the truth and let him go to Huicheng to make trouble. That was the most important day in her best friend's life. She would never let this selfish man ruin it. You heard wrong. I'm going to Huicheng to attend a wedding. Claire will also go. However, it's our college classmate who's getting married. Morgan narrowed his eyes. Claire doesn't have any close classmates in Huicheng. Luna sneered. Morgan, have you ever really understood Claire? When have you ever truly cared about her feelings? When have you ever considered things from her perspective? You never have. You don't understand how precious Claire is at all. You never deserve her sincere feelings for you all these years. After saying these words, Luna turned around and left. Morgan looked at her back and suddenly there was a dull pain in his heart that he didn't understand why he felt so uncomfortable. Suddenly, he just had an intense longing to see Claire, even if it was just to see her from a distance. The next day, he received a large box sent by express from Huicheng. The reason it could be delivered so quickly was that Henry had specially arranged a chartered plane for the delivery. At that time, I was immersed in the joy of the wedding rehearsal and knew nothing about all this. When Morgan opened the box, his hands trembled slightly. At first, he was a bit unfamiliar with the things inside. But soon, memories came flooding back like a tide. The first Cartier necklace he gave to Claire. That priceless sapphire bracelet. The brand new Porsche car key, and a whole box full of various jewelry. Finally, there was that necklace. Morgan held the velvet jewelry box, and his vision suddenly blurred. When are you going to marry your little princess? His friends always teased him like this. At that time, he was young and frivolous, looking down on everyone. He had many admirers, but he didn't care about any of them. 18-year-old Claire was bright and charming, like a lotus emerging from the water. Every time he took her out, it attracted countless envious looks. He was secretly proud because such a perfect girl belonged only to him. At that time, he really wanted to marry her. Or rather, he had already decided on this outcome since he was very young. That's why he gave her that unique ring. But when did he start to feel tired? And when did the new love replace the old one? Was it really that he didn't love her anymore? Or was he too sure that she would never leave? Morgan clenched the ring tightly, and tears slid down uncontrollably. At this time, I was focused on the final wedding rehearsal and had no idea at all about Morgan's reaction when he saw those gifts. Especially when he saw the Cartier necklace. When Henry kissed me for the first time during the break before the wedding, I wouldn't know even more that because of that ring. Morgan slapped Selena hard. How ironic it was. On that very day, Selena even knelt down and framed me. When I was pushed down by Morgan and fell in the mall, no one expected that there would be such a day, but now, I won't feel heartbroken about Morgan and Selena's affairs anymore. When Father Morgan returned the ring to me, I also revealed to them the news that I was about to get married. The two elders were shocked. Because the wedding they came to Huicheng to attend was the wedding of Henry, the president of the Henry family group. And this prospective bride, who had always been mysterious and low-key and couldn't even be photographed by paparazzi, turned out to be me. They were both happy for me and felt extremely sorry. Especially Morgan's mother. She held my hand tightly, and tears couldn't stop flowing. Claire, I shouldn't be crying on your big day, but I'm really sorry. It's all my fault for not teaching Morgan well. Letting him make one mistake after another. Morgan wanted to break up with Selena, but Selena refused to agree no matter what. People from the Morgan family even made a scene at the Morgan family's villa, vowing to stay there and not leave. Just when the two families were in a deadlock, Selena was suddenly found to be pregnant. The Morgan family couldn't let Selena abort the child. It seemed that this marriage was a done deal. I leaned in Morgan's mother's arms, and my eyes also turned red. I remembered the days when I first arrived at the Morgan family and missed my parents every night. I remembered the scene when Morgan's mother held me gently and comforted me. I remembered those carefree youthful days. The years when they loved me like their own daughter. Tears finally fell down. Claire, Morgan doesn't deserve you. Morgan's mother wiped away my tears and sighed, then smiled with relief. The Henry family has always had an excellent reputation in Jingbei, and Henry is a leading figure among the new business elites. Claire, your future life will surely be wonderful. I know that a man as gentle as Henry, even if he doesn't love me, my married life won't be too bad. But I never expected that. Happiness would come so overwhelmingly and passionately. When I gave Henry the ring left by my parents, he took out a treasured video from his phone album. In the video, I was wearing a light blue long dress, dancing gracefully in the middle of the dance floor, and Henry was standing not far away, his eyes always following my figure. That was the opening dance of the charity ball last year. I was the special guest invited to perform the first dance. The person who invited me onto the stage was Henry. However, at that time, I had Morgan in my heart. I danced this dance with him out of courtesy. I just thought that this new business elite had an extraordinary demeanor. Who would have thought that there would be such a fate today? I looked at myself dancing gracefully in the video, crying and laughing at the same time, like a child. I pointed at us on the screen. But I couldn't say a word. Henry gently hugged me from behind. Remember I said that I used to have a sweetheart? He stroked the ring gently and rubbed his face against my neck. Claire, I've been waiting for the right moment. When you gave me this ring, I wanted to tell you that the person I've always liked is you. When I was young, I loved reading romantic novels the most. In them, the phrase, gentlemanly scoundrel, was often used to describe the male protagonist. This phrase seemed derogatory but was actually complimentary. However, I had never thought that someone as refined and elegant as Henry would also have such a side. On our wedding day, he was dressed in a suit and tie, looking debonair. His whole demeanor was outstanding, like a jade tree in the wind. But on our wedding night, after taking off that formal attire, he also became a scoundrel that made me blush and my heart race. For the first time, I heard so many sweet love words. For the first time, someone called me baby in the gentlest tone. For the first time, I was coaxed to try all kinds of embarrassing postures. For the first time, I cried because of pain and shed tears because of pleasure. For the first time, I experienced the taste of love and tasted the beauty of joy. We lingered all night and forgot about time. On the second day of our marriage, I slept until the sun was high in the sky. While Henry had already completed a series of daily routines such as morning exercise, reading the newspaper, and sipping tea. A few days after our marriage, the servants at home told me with a smile, "Madam, you didn't see how happy Henry was smiling that day." Yes, I've been in the Henry family for so many years, and I've never seen Mr. Henry so talkative. He greeted everyone, even the courier guy at the door wasn't spared. I think Mr. Henry couldn't wait to tell the whole world that he had married his beloved bride. I was both shy and amused and quickly found an excuse to hide in the backyard. From a distance, I saw Henry's car driving in. He got out of the car, handed his briefcase and coat to the butler and looked in my direction immediately. Henry. I stood in the garden, jumping up and down and waving to him. Seeing my smile, the corners of Henry's mouth also rose unconsciously. He walked towards me through the lush garden, and I couldn't wait to run towards him. He stopped in place, shook his head with a helpless smile and opened his arms waiting. The moment I threw myself into his arms, he hugged me tightly. It was on the day of Claire's engagement banquet that Morgan learned that she was going to marry Henry. At first, he couldn't believe the news at all. He even ridiculously thought that it was just a trick Claire played to deliberately annoy him. Just like his engagement with Selena, it wouldn't have any real outcome at all. But when his friends sent him real-time photos of Claire's engagement banquet, when he saw Claire wearing a champagne-colored dress and holding Henry's arm, but hadn't she always liked him the most since they were young? Since they were young, wasn't her biggest wish to marry him? When Henry affectionately put a diamond ring on Claire's finger, when Claire happily nestled in Henry's arms, suddenly, Morgan felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if something had broken. He stood there in a daze, and the voices of the people around him became blurred. Only one thought remained in his mind. Claire was really getting married. Claire was about to become someone else's wife. But hadn't she always liked him the most since they were young? Since they were young, wasn't her biggest wish to marry him? On her 18th birthday, she handed him that ring with her own hands. They had once made a promise for a lifetime. And if he really had no feelings for her at all, how could he have indulged her to stay by his side all these years? In fact, rather than indulgence, it was more like he had been despicably using Claire all along. Back then, he was young and impetuous. As the heir of the Morgan family group, he had excellent conditions and was charming. There were always all kinds of beauties throwing themselves at him. He enjoyed their pursuit, kindness, and jealousy, but he knew very well in his heart that these were just games. When Claire mentioned his romantic history, she always said that each relationship ended because of her, but she didn't know that he had never cared about those women at all. When he got tired of them, he naturally wanted to get rid of them, but as the heir of the Beijing social circle back then, how could he bear the reputation of being heartless? So this younger sister who had relied on him since childhood became the best shield. He deliberately sent people to provoke Claire. Claire back then was innocent and pure like the first snow. As long as Lucy or others said a few words, she would immediately rush over to confront him with red eyes, and he, while finding her annoying, had to break up with those women. And at the same time, he secretly felt pleased. He actually liked to see Claire looking jealous. He liked to see her shedding tears pitifully because of other women around him. She was both cute and pitiful, but she had always been easy to coax. As long as he said a few sweet words, gave her a few small gifts, and accompanied her to go shopping, watch movies, and eat desserts, she would immediately stop crying and smile. He thought that she would forgive him this time too, but Selena was pregnant. Although my parents felt sorry for me, they couldn't change anything. He was determined to break off this ill-fated relationship. In his eyes, Selena was a scheming woman. From the very first moment they met, she had been plotting against him. All those chance encounters and saving the situation. All those attempts to recreate the romance of his parents were carefully designed scams. Selena was just a gold digger who wanted to use this opportunity to climb up the social ladder. He forced Selena to go to the hospital, but she refused to go no matter what. Seeing that he had no room for turning back, Selena actually called her relatives to make trouble. Morgan had never seen such vulgar rascals. They squatted at the entrance of the mansion, crying and making a fuss, threatening to expose the scandal. The Morgan family had been in business for generations and valued their reputation the most. Even calling the police wasn't the best option. Helplessly, he could only settle the matter with money. But after these people tasted the benefits, they became even more excessive. They were like a persistent bone disease, like blood-sucking mosquitoes, like an inescapable shadow, like a nightmare from which one could never wake up. Morgan was so worn out by these people that he was physically and mentally exhausted. And Selena's belly grew bigger day by day. Finally, he made up his mind to break all ties. When the security team cleared the scene, Selena finally realized the reality. She asked for a huge amount of hush money. On the day the truth came out, Morgan seemed to recognize Selena for the first time. She was snobbish, greedy, and hypocritical, ugly beneath her beautiful appearance. The moment he handed her the check, he couldn't help laughing at himself. Laughing at how stupid he was. The childhood sweetheart relationship. The warmth of being together day and night. A real man could resist external temptations and also make his beloved shine. And he was an out-and-out scoundrel. Later, Claire's fiancé drove her BMW to Hu City too. When he went to the garage, that car was no longer there. Only his own car was left, parked there all alone. Morgan got into the driver's seat. He drove onto the highway and raced madly. Round after round, tirelessly. Finally, he closed his eyes and let go of the steering wheel. He crashed through the guardrail, but he didn't succeed as he wished. His parents were crying their hearts out in the hospital ward. It seemed that Morgan really grew up at this moment. He endured the great pain and comforted his parents. He secretly vowed that he would never be so absurd again in his life. Soon after, Selena terminated her pregnancy. Then she was convicted by the court for suspected extortion. Her father and brother, who were the most troublesome among them, were also involved in the case. Other relatives, seeing that there was no more money to squeeze out, all left. Although the money they got wasn't much, it was still worth the trip. They took the money and went back to their hometown, not caring about Selena's life or death at all. Only Selena's mother, because her son was in prison, cried all day long and hated Selena deeply. These past events that happened in Beijing were like faded old photos, gradually becoming blurred, and Claire's brand new life had just begun. I became a vegetative state in order to save Brandon. When I woke up and opened my eyes for the first time, I saw Brandon and the woman beside him who looked very much like me. He said she was his secretary, but when I watched her leave with tears in her eyes, he hurriedly chased after her, not even sparing me a single glance. On the day I woke up, the first person I saw was Brandon. Looking further, there was a woman standing beside him who looked a lot like me. Perhaps I had been staring for too long, and Brandon quickly explained, "Sylvia, this is my secretary, Bianca." Bianca's face was a bit pale, and she was biting her lower lip so hard that it looked especially bright red. Actually, even if he hadn't said anything, I could have guessed most of it. Their relationship was not simple. I didn't know how long I had been in a coma, but the Brandon in front of me now behaved in a more mature way, and the suit on him no longer had the cheap texture I remembered. I had been in a coma for a long time, so long that Brandon had already succeeded in starting his business and even found a substitute for me. But my memory was still stuck at the time when he was threatened and almost got hit on the head with a brick when he came home at night. I didn't think too much at that time and subconsciously blocked that blow for him. The pain was so intense that I couldn't even see Brandon's face clearly in front of me. I only felt warm tears falling on my face, and the smell of blood was very pungent. I also heard him desperately shouting my name, "Sylvia, don't fall asleep." But in the next moment of that memory, when he called my name, there was somehow an inexplicable sense of strangeness, and I even felt a bit embarrassed. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Bianca ran out. Brandon's gaze kept following her. It was only when he reached the door that he remembered there was another person in the room. He looked at me with complicated eyes. "Sylvia, there's something going on in the company. I'll come to see you when I'm free." After saying that, he left without looking back. Between me and Bianca, he had already made his choice. It felt like a piece of my heart had been dug out of nowhere, leaving it empty, with only blood flowing. The moment the brick hit me back then didn't seem that painful anymore. The "okay" that I struggled to say was drowned out by the loud sound of the door closing. Time is so cruel. Some people stay where they are, while others have moved on and will never look back. The doctor said that I had been in a coma for more than 5 years and that my body hadn't moved for a long time, so it would take some time to adapt. That he told me not to rush and to work hard on rehabilitation. I drifted off to sleep again in a daze and dreamed about the time when Brandon and I just started our business after graduating from college. It was tough, but also very happy. We were squeezed into a small rented apartment, going out every day full of hope and coming back exhausted. When negotiating business, he would block all the alcohol for me. Once, he even drank until he had stomach bleeding. I cried beside his bed for a long time, and he laughed at me for being adorably silly. I also once secretly went to beg others humbly without telling him, and finally, he found me angrily. But when he saw the heels of my feet that were all bruised because I was wearing high heels, his anger disappeared in an instant. In the end, he carried me home step by step. To save money, we rented a dilapidated and narrow house on the 8th floor without an elevator. By the time he carried me downstairs, Brandon was already sweating all over. I felt sorry for him. "You're so tired. I can go up by myself." He chuckled, "Silly girl. No matter how tired I am, I still have the strength to take you home." Take me home? It seemed that I had heard these words many times in that pitch-dark dream. But when I woke up from the dream, there was no one to take me home anymore. When I woke up, a large area of the pillow was wet. I didn't know when my parents had come. "Sylvia, you've finally woken up." Mom held my hand, her voice choked with sobs. Dad behind her also had his eyes turn red. "Dad, Mom, how have you been these years?" I smiled, trying to make myself look as healthy as possible to ease their concerns. Don't worry, we're all fine. Dad comfortingly patted Mom's shoulder. Mom quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Yes, your dad and I are both fine. Over the years, although Brandon has been busy, he always took time to accompany you and visit us. Yes, Brandon is a very filial child. Dad rarely expressed his approval of Brandon. That's good. I smiled and nodded. Then I saw my parents glance at each other, and their expressions became a bit strange. Dad, Mom, what's wrong? I guessed that they might want to tell me about Brandon and Bianca, but the following conversation was completely beyond my expectation. I heard that Brandon and Bianca came today? Mom tentatively asked, her eyes carefully observing the changes in my expression. Her sudden change of words made it seem even more like she was trying to hide something. Yeah, she came. I tried to act calm. Brandon and his secretary, their relationship is not ordinary, right? I pretended to ask casually, but my chest hurt terribly. Dad sighed. When we first met Bianca, we were also very surprised. How could there be someone who looked so much like you? Of course, we were also very angry at first. But gradually, we understood Brandon's feelings. He loves you very much. He poured all his guilt and love for you onto her. Bianca is a good girl. At first, we had a very bad attitude towards her, but she didn't complain at all. She even came every day. Knowing that your mom had trouble walking, she would follow her when she went shopping for groceries every day. She was even very concerned about your affairs. Sometimes when we couldn't come to see you because of our poor health, she came on our behalf, took pictures for us, and carefully reported your situation. Dad finished speaking with his head down. Perhaps even he didn't know what kind of expression he should use to face me. Starting from the word Bianca, there was more kindness in his tone. Sylvia, during this period of time, your mom and I have already regarded Bianca as our second daughter. Dad finally seemed to muster up the courage and looked up to meet my eyes. We know that you and Brandon used to truly love each other, but we can also see that Brandon loves Bianca very much now. Mom patted the back of my hand, her tone just like when she coaxed me to drink medicine when I was a child. Sylvia, forcing things won't bring happiness. Instead of making all three people unhappy, it's better to let go and help them. My heart, which already had cracks, was shattered into pieces. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Brandon came to pick me up. I was just about to refuse when he said first, I've been renting the previous house all along. Do you want to go and have a look? I was surprised and met his eyes. After several attempts to speak, I finally managed to say, okay. We were like friends who hadn't seen each other for a long time, distant and strange. We remained silent in the car. Fortunately, the music from the radio filled the silence. How did you and Bianca meet? I pretended to look out of the window, but actually I was looking at my own expression reflected on the car window, trying hard to act nonchalant. Huh? Brandon tilted his head sideways. I didn't know if he really didn't hear me or was just pretending to be stupid. Sylvia, what are you talking about? I turned off the stereo. I asked how you and Bianca met. We met when she came for a job interview. Didn't I tell you? She's my secretary. Brandon pulled a smile at the corners of his mouth. And from the corner of his eye, he kept glancing at me from time to time. This was the trick he often used to hide his guilt. It was the same when he proposed to me and lied that he was just going to a classmate's wedding. With the same expression, but he was no longer the Brandon who loved me back then. Brandon, I was just in a coma for a few years, but I'm not stupid. Your relationship is not ordinary, right? Brandon suddenly stepped on the accelerator and slammed on the brakes. Sylvia, I was just missing you too much and was confused for a moment. Brandon looked at me remorsefully. After our eyes met, he quickly lowered his head. I've already broken up with her completely. She's just a substitute. If you don't like it, I'll fire her right now. Brandon, can you really let her go? I sighed. Since the day he chased after her figure and left the hospital, today was the second time I saw him since I woke up. If it was really that easy to make a choice, why did he have to wait for so long? Sylvia, I've already proposed to you. Please believe me. My hand was held tightly by him. Brandon's eyes were filled with guilt, and the corners of his eyes were a bit wet. Brandon, I want to go up and have a look. I withdrew my hand and unbuckled my seat belt. Perhaps both Brandon's and my hearts were still wavering at this moment. After not seeing each other for a few years, this building looked even more dilapidated. I pushed the car door open and went upstairs on my own. With every step I took, the memories of when we lived together came flooding back from the depths of my mind. Brandon and I often came home in the middle of the night. The lights in the building were in disrepair for a long time, so we would put a flashlight in our bags to light the way. The cheap batteries often ran out of power. The staircase was pitch black, and I was often so scared that I hid in Brandon's arms. It was only much later that I found out that there were several times when Brandon deliberately changed the batteries before we went upstairs. Also, when we just started our business back then, Brandon and I often worked overnight in the studio. Once, when Brandon and I went to work with dark circles under our eyes, we were teased that we had fought all night in the office. As a result, when it was time for lunch that day, Brandon turned off my computer. Just when I was about to curse, he took out a bouquet of roses. I then remembered that it was the 6th anniversary of our relationship. Let's go home and fight all night today. The table in the studio is not very comfortable to sleep on. Who wants to sleep with you? Get lost. When I reached the door, my nose couldn't help but feel sour. The sound of footsteps behind me had been following me closely. Why didn't you wait for me? A helpless voice came from above my head, but who was it that didn't wait for whom? Brandon reached out to open the door. This gesture made it seem like he was holding me in his arms. The lock was as difficult to open as before. In the short minute when he was opening the door, his breathing gradually became rapid above me and finally stopped abruptly when the door opened. There was a pair of Melody plush slippers beside the doormat, but what I liked was Kuromi. In other words, these slippers didn't belong to me, and this house also had a new mistress. What's wrong? Don't you like these slippers? Brandon hadn't noticed yet. These slippers aren't mine. Actually, I could accept that Brandon had a new lover. After all, no one has the obligation to wait for someone who doesn't know when they will wake up. But I couldn't tolerate her taking advantage of the love between me and him and turning the memories that originally belonged to me and Brandon into hers. I walked in and opened the shoe cabinet. None of the shoes inside were mine. I looked around dejectedly. Everything seemed unchanged, but secretly bore the traces of others. This was no longer the love nest and the memories between Brandon and me. Brandon hadn't realized it yet and thought that I was still immersed in memories. I have someone come to clean it every week, just like before. If you want, you can stay here for a while before I take you to our new home. Was it Bianca who came to clean it? The expression on Brandon's face froze. Sylvia, it's not what you think. Brandon, please take me home. There was no need for any explanation at all. The truth was already quite obvious. I've cooked the fish porridge that you like best. Have some before you leave. Brandon quickly changed the topic, walked into the kitchen, and brought out the porridge. The small casserole used for cooking the porridge was still the one I bought before. I used to be in poor health. The old Chinese doctor advised me to eat less shrimp and crab and have more fish instead. But once I got a fish bone stuck in my throat, so I stayed away from fish after that. To make me eat fish, Brandon often got up after sleeping for just 1 or 2 hours to pick out the fish bones and cook fish porridge. He was reluctant to buy heat-insulating gloves and would just use a rag to hold the casserole. Every time Brandon brought it out, he would be scalded and put his fingers on his earlobes, looking like a puppy that had made a mistake. Unexpectedly, it was the same now. The mature man in a suit was scalded and pinched his earlobes with a dull expression, looking so silly that one wanted to reach out and touch him. I couldn't help laughing. But my nose felt even more sour. The porridge was served and pushed in front of me. But his next move poured cold water on me. I remembered that you're afraid of the fishy smell, so I added pepper powder. It'll be ready to eat in a moment. I hated the smell of pepper the most. Whenever I smelled it, I wanted to sneeze. We never had pepper powder at home before. For whom this bottle of pepper powder existed was self-evident. You remembered it wrong. I hate the smell of pepper the most. I tried my best to make my voice sound calm, but the palms of my hands behind my back were already hurting from my fingernails digging into them. Brandon looked at me in surprise. Didn't you always? The second half of the sentence stopped abruptly. Only then did he suddenly realize. Sylvia, I'm sorry. I forgot. You two have lived here, so I won't disturb you. There was no point in making a fool of myself. This was no longer a place I was reluctant to leave. I turned around and left. I hadn't walked 2 steps before my wrist was grabbed and I was held in his arms. Sylvia, I'm sorry. I've always just regarded her as you. As time passed, I got confused. His chin rested on my shoulder socket, and his warm breath was blowing on me unevenly. I tried to break free from his hands. Brandon, then can you tell clearly who you love now? Do you think it's fair to Bianca and me to be in such an ambiguous situation? I know clearly, Sylvia. He held my shoulders and looked into my eyes with a rare firmness in his eyes. I've always loved you and only you. She's just a substitute for you. I couldn't accept the fact of losing you. At the beginning, I fantasized every day that you weren't in a coma and did things for 2 people by myself. She's just an outlet for my feelings for you. That's all. Crash. The sound came from the doorway. The shopping bag slipped from the hand and the hot pot ingredients inside spilled all over the floor. Looking up, it was Bianca. She was trembling all over and tears were sliding down her fair skin and seeping into the corners of her mouth. She covered her face and ran out. The sound insulation in the old building was very poor and the clattering footsteps echoed around. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that Brandon's upper body subconsciously leaned forward. He wanted to run after her. Go if you want. I can go home by myself. I can't eat spicy food and this hot pot was obviously not prepared for me. And these dishes definitely couldn't be eaten by one person. Bianca wanted to have a candlelight dinner with Brandon tonight and unexpectedly, I became the third wheel. I told you that I love you. It's better for her to know these words earlier. Brandon said ruthlessly. I wasn't interested in acting out a drama of deep affection with Brandon anymore, so I asked him to take me home. Before I was discharged from the hospital, I searched online for the company that Brandon and I had founded. After getting the investment from the Tyler family that time, the company developed rapidly and soon went public. Brandon also became an upstart in City S overnight. I also found that Brandon and Bianca had a couples account, which was specifically used to record their daily life as a couple on social platforms. I had watched every video in it in the past few days. I originally thought that since Bianca hadn't appeared in the videos shot in the rental house, she hadn't been there. Unexpectedly, she had already completely replaced the memories between Brandon and me with her own. My parents had moved into a new house, and everything there was strange to me. When they saw that Brandon came back with me, they didn't look very happy. My father even looked expectantly outside the door, probably hoping that Bianca would appear there in the next second. The meal was unusually solemn, and the atmosphere was filled with awkwardness. When we were almost finished eating, my father received a phone call. What? His face suddenly changed. He hung up the phone in a hurry and looked at Brandon. Brandon, Bianca cut her wrists and is now being rushed to the hospital for rescue. Brandon put down his chopsticks with a snap and stood up. Which hospital? The Municipal People's Hospital. I'll go there now. Brandon said as he walked out quickly, as fast as in a 100-meter sprint. Having been in a relationship with him for so many years, I knew best what he looked like when he cared about someone. I'll go with you. My father hurried to follow him. I opened my phone and skillfully searched for their couple's account. The latest post was taken by Bianca while crying. I'm very sorry to appear in front of everyone in such a state. Brandon had an ex-girlfriend who he loved deeply. She became a vegetative state due to an accident. Now that she's awake, I'm withdrawing from this relationship among 3 people. I've already deleted the videos on this account. If she minds, Brandon can cancel it. I've been with Brandon for 3 years. I'm really happy to accompany him through all the difficulties and watch the company grow. But without him, I really don't know what the meaning of life is. Thank you all for witnessing the happiest 3 years of my life. I think my life has come to an end. Goodbye. She didn't mention the reason for my coma, nor did she mention that the company was founded by Brandon and me. It seemed that I was the one who had snatched everything away. Sure enough, the comments were all about worrying about Bianca's safety and cursing at me. Oh my God, sister, don't give up your life. That vegetative ex-girlfriend is really like a thief. I mean, but I just hope she never wakes up. Feel so sorry for sister. Obviously, it was you who accompanied him all the way. She didn't do anything but got everything while lying in bed. From the video, Brandon's eyes when looking at sister are full of love. Sister, don't be sad. He loves you. The ex-girlfriend's moral blackmail won't succeed. Sister, don't give up and let her succeed. The comment section, without knowing the whole story, was really ugly. I was so angry that I trembled all over. At this time, a hand suddenly landed on my shoulder. I turned around and met my mother's gaze. Sylvia, Brandon's heart is no longer with you. If you continue like this, you'll get hurt. Please listen to Mom's advice, okay? Everyone was persuading me to let go, but the fact was that I had already known that the person Brandon loved was no longer me. But no one knew that Brandon was the one who hadn't seen his own heart clearly. Bianca was rescued in time and was out of danger. My father and Brandon didn't come back that night. The next day, my mother asked me to go to the hospital and make things clear in front of everyone. After arriving at the hospital, my father was talking with a middle-aged woman in front of Bianca's hospital bed, while Brandon was lowering his head to blow on the porridge for Bianca, as if they were the real family. Bianca. I put the fruit basket on Bianca's table. Let's have a talk. Bianca quickly hid the smile on her lips, bit her lip with her head down, and soon put on that pitiful look again. Bianca has just been rescued. I beg you to leave her alone and stop stimulating her, okay? The middle-aged woman rushed in front of me, very emotional. Soon, the eyes of the patients in other beds fell on me. Sylvia, what are you doing? There was dissatisfaction in my father's voice. Sylvia, can we talk about this when we go back, okay? Brandon also put down the bowl and begged me with a pained expression. Don't misunderstand. Sylvia came here today to make things clear. My mother couldn't stand it and stood in front of me. Bianca, I told Brandon long ago that I knew he loved you now and that I was willing to let go. But at that time, he didn't see his own heart clearly, so he said things that hurt you. After this incident, I think you both know your love for each other clearly. Please don't do anything to hurt yourself again. Also, I think we won't have any private contact in the future, so I hope you can clarify the whole thing online and don't let my life be harassed by irrelevant people. After saying all these words in one breath, it seemed that all my strength had been drained away. I'm sorry. Bianca's voice was very low, with an obvious crying tone. I was too selfish. I just wanted to say goodbye to him. This relationship was actually stolen by me. Enough. I'll only say this once. Brandon and I have no romantic relationship now. I hope this matter ends here. It's good for you, for me, and even for Brandon. I couldn't bear Bianca's act of pretending to be a victim. Everyone in this space was pointing their fingers at me, making me feel suffocated. Sylvia, be polite. My father said to me seriously. To be exact, it was an order. Brandon should have figured it out last night which path he would take in the future and who he would be with. He didn't dare to look into my eyes and listen to all this silently. Perhaps even he himself didn't expect that what he said yesterday would be overturned by himself so quickly. I've already tried my best to be polite. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. I'm leaving now. Goodbye. I forced a smile and left the ward without looking back. As soon as I turned around, I heard the middle-aged woman's dissatisfaction with me and my father's scolding. But I didn't care about these anymore. Sylvia. My mother hurried to catch up with me and handed me a tissue. If you want to cry, just cry. I'll talk to your father about it. The wall that had been built up in my heart completely collapsed at this moment. Pretending to be strong really took a lot of energy. My mother's figure in front of me seemed blurry. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I held them back in the end. Mom, I'm okay. I told Brandon that I wanted to go back to the company to have a look. That small studio back then had already become a big company with hundreds of employees. I stood downstairs and looked up, trying to clearly see the four big characters Shuluo Group on the building. Although I had been staring at it along the way for half an hour. However, the intense refraction of sunlight by the glass was so blinding that the large characters were too high to be seen clearly. In the days that followed, whenever I thought of this scene, I realized that it was a warning from heaven. The book was placed too high to be seen, and the past could no longer be chased. Sylvia? My thoughts were interrupted. Looking back, it was Franklin. Franklin was a college classmate who started a business with us back then. But when I read the news, I found that he had already sold most of his shares to the Tyler family and kept a small portion while being an absentee owner. Why are you here? I was both surprised and delighted. Brandon told me you were coming and asked me to show you around. He was afraid that you, who always gets lost easily, would lose your way. Franklin still loved to joke as before. I got lost back then and it was you who showed me the way. I retorted. Suddenly, Franklin's smile disappeared and he let out a soft sigh. Many things happened after you had that accident. I know everything about Bianca. I patted Franklin to signal him not to worry. Bianca is much more scheming than you think. After you fell into a coma, Brandon was so longing for you that he got involved with her. Bianca is very popular in the company. You should be careful later. Don't worry. Brandon and I are already over. I shrugged, feeling more relaxed than ever before. Franklin was surprised. Really? I smiled and nodded. Really? Franklin looked a bit unnatural, but he didn't dare to continue asking and had to change the topic to talk with me about the Tyler family's recent attempt to completely take control of the say in Shuluo. Franklin's wife was seriously ill some time ago, and the Tyler family took advantage of his difficult situation and forced him to sell his shares. When I was in a coma, my shares had been held by Brandon all along. Franklin reminded me to be careful, saying that perhaps the Tyler family would come to me soon. While we were talking, the elevator soon arrived. Two young employees were standing at the elevator door. One of them mistook me for Bianca and greeted me affectionately. Sister Bianca, you're finally back. The employee beside her quickly pulled her back. Sister Bianca is still in the hospital. We must clearly distinguish the fake from the real one. Some people, without making any efforts, just want to grab everything. Obviously, these words were meant for me. If you want to submit your resignation letter, go to the HR department. Don't slander the company's shareholders here. Franklin glared at them and took me out of the elevator. Although those two employees shut their mouths, their looks were still unfriendly. Sylvia, when you were in a coma, there were only a few people in the company. Now, except for me and Brandon, almost everyone has left. Bianca is good at manipulating people's hearts, and you two look alike. Besides, Franklin looked at me and hesitated to say something. At that time, Brandon had already regarded her as you and had never denied that she wasn't the one who started working hard with us from the beginning. Sylvia, actually Brandon had a really hard time back then. He even went to see a doctor. It's all in the past, Franklin. You don't need to speak for him anymore. Since I've decided to let go, I'll never regret it. Even if Brandon had many difficulties, none of them could be the reason for him to find Bianca as a substitute. But Sylvia, can you really let it go after all these years? Franklin clearly didn't believe me. Actually, I came to see Shuluo for the last time today. I haven't participated in the company's affairs for so many years and don't want to care about them anymore. Bianca and Brandon were recognized as a couple in the company.My coming back would definitely be a thorn in their hearts. Franklin opened his eyes wide in surprise. Are you serious? Do you also plan to sell your shares? I smiled calmly. It's not that I must sell them. I can also be an absentee owner like you and wait for dividends. Sylvia, you really? Franklin's eyes were full of helplessness. But that's the truth. Bianca has packaged herself as a perfect victim. Presumably, many people have already seen that video. Throughout the morning, wherever I went, strange looks and whispers followed me. Some people even took out their mobile phones to take pictures of me. Whether I wanted to leave or not, I had to leave. I soon lost interest after not walking around for long. The neatly divided workstations, the unfamiliar faces, and the cold reinforced concrete building. Everything was not what it used to be. There was nothing worth my lingering. Franklin and I left separately. His wife's health was not good, so I didn't let him see me off. After seeing Franklin off, a car stopped in front of me. The car window slowly rolled down, and a familiar face appeared in the back seat. It was Tyler, the current head of the Tyler family group and also my high school deskmate. The last time we met, he threatened me harshly, saying that he wouldn't show mercy in the review of Shuluo. Tyler leaned over, slightly raising his eyebrows. Shall we have a chat? Although I just woke up not long ago, I'm clear about your attempt to completely control Shuluo. I don't think there's anything for us to talk about. I directly refused and walked forward to hail a taxi. The car followed and blocked my way. Don't be too absolute. I have something that might interest you. It's about Bianca. Don't you really want to take a look? Tyler was quite kind. Although I refused him, he still sent me home. As soon as I opened the door, I found Brandon and Bianca were also there. They were sitting in the living room with my father, and their expressions when they saw me were very strange. I originally wanted to pretend not to see them and slip back to my bedroom, but Brandon called out to me, Sylvia, did you meet Tyler today? Are you spying on me? I asked him back. Brandon's face suddenly turned a bit pale. It was a colleague from the company who told me. It has nothing to do with Brandon. Bianca explained for Brandon. Tyler and Brandon have different operation concepts. Now Tyler is trying every means to take Shuluo as his own. I'm also worried that because you're angry with me, you might ruin Brandon's years of hard work. Every word Bianca said made me angry. She seemed aggrieved on the surface but was actually fanning the flames secretly. Shuluo was founded by Brandon and me. If it's his hard work, isn't it mine too? I interrupted her. If it weren't for Shuluo, why would I have been in a coma in the hospital for so many years? And why could you be so glorious in the company? Seeing that Bianca's tears were about to fall, Brandon quickly shielded her behind him. Sylvia, Bianca is just worried. Worried? I looked at him coldly. She doesn't know what kind of person I am. Don't you, my ex-boyfriend who dated me for 6 years, know either? Brandon breathed a sigh of relief when he realized that I hadn't sold my shares. We're just afraid that in case. Enough. My father slowly said, for safety's sake, Sylvia, you'd better transfer all your shares to Bianca's name for the time being. This can also prevent unnecessary rumors from spreading and affecting the company's stock price. He didn't even bother to ask. It was a blatant commanding tone. Whose home was this exactly? Your bank account has been receiving money all these years thanks to Bianca. She didn't embezzle a single penny of your dividends. Now it's just a formality. Seeing that I didn't respond, my father continued his persuasion. Without Bianca, there would be no Shuluo today. In just one short sentence, my efforts were casually wiped away. I really envy you. I looked at Bianca with a cold smile. You can fall in love with the boss at work and easily get shares just by posting some videos. Unlike me. I invested all the money I earned from my side business back then. When we first started the business, Brandon's mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Paying high medical expenses while investing in the business was simply beyond the means of an ordinary family. On the surface, I held a slightly larger share of the company's equity, while Franklin and Brandon shared equally. But in fact, the money for Brandon was provided by me. I started serializing novels online when I was in college, and the money for starting the business was saved up from my manuscript fees one by one. The male protagonists in my novels more or less had Brandon's shadow. The only difference was that the male and female protagonists in the novels would eventually break through numerous obstacles, reunite, and make up, while Brandon and I ended up on bad terms. Sometimes Brandon had to go to the hospital. At the drinking parties when he wasn't there, I once drank until I had stomach bleeding. During those days when day and night were reversed, Brandon often fell asleep right away, and the sound of my typing on the keyboard while rushing to write manuscripts couldn't wake him up at all. Sylvia, now is not the time to haggle over these things. Brandon looked a bit embarrassed. Really? I thought my father wanted to settle accounts. Listen to what you're saying. My father's tone became heavier. Uncle, don't be angry. Sister Sylvia is just angry for a moment. After all, I'm an outsider. It's understandable that she has concerns. Bianca didn't forget to add fuel to the fire. Bianca. I've already regarded Brandon as my own son. Bianca, you're his fiancée, so you're also like half of my daughter. You're not an outsider. Brandon and my father spoke up at the same time to defend Bianca. Then I'm the outsider. I'll just leave. I ignored the voices behind me like the wind in my ears. With a bang, I left this strange home. Waking up and losing your beloved lover isn't that scary. What's scary is that all the people you love stand on the opposite side of you because of a substitute. Tears wet my palms. I helplessly huddled in the corner, trembling and sobbing. I didn't know how long I had been crying. When I looked up again, my eyes were a bit swollen and painful. A plain white tissue came into my sight. Who could it be? I was actually quite reluctant inside, afraid that it might be Brandon. When I saw Tyler's face, I immediately breathed a relief. Fortunately, it wasn't him. The person who used to be the first one to come to my mind when I was in danger has now become a stranger that I need to be on guard against everywhere. I didn't stand on ceremony with Tyler and grab the tissue. Why didn't you leave? I guessed that you wouldn't stay long. Tyler was still as straightforward as he was in high school. Do you want to talk? Tyler slightly raised his eyebrows, with his hands lazily in his pockets. Why do you want Shuluo so much? I looked up at him. The current scale of Shuluo was nothing compared to the projects invested by the Tyler family. I just like to have everything under my control. It doesn't matter if I tell you. Brandon's operation mode has made Shuluo's positioning unclear, so it can't retain a fixed user group. I won't allow any investment failure projects in the Tyler family. With that, Tyler pulled me up from the ground. I almost fell into his arms due to inertia. Fortunately, I stopped in time. I only want your shares. You don't need to throw yourself into my arms. Tyler slowly withdrew his hand and signaled me to get in the car. As soon as I closed the car door, Tyler handed me a folder. Take a look first and then decide whether to sell or not. Tyler seemed to have guessed my thoughts accurately. The degree to which my father protected Bianca really made me suspicious. I opened the folder with curiosity, and it was full of information about Bianca. That middle-aged woman in the hospital last time was Bianca's biological mother. By the way, she was also the woman my father kept outside. Tyler collected Bianca's information very carefully. Some important information was even bolded, just like when he used to explain problems to me and would mark the key points with a pen. I closed the folder. Although all the doubts in my heart had been confirmed, I was still hesitating. Shuluo was also founded by me. I understood that Brandon didn't want to hand it over to others. Take a look at this one. Tyler handed me another folder. Tyler met my puzzled eyes. After reading this, you should be able to make a decision. What is it? The profit situation and development plan of Shuluo in the recent 4 quarters. I sighed. Do you have mind-reading skills or something? Otherwise, how could he predict my next move every time? However, Tyler had always been like this. He was good at understanding people's hearts and liked things to develop according to his expectations. It's not mind-reading skills. I just know you well enough. After saying that, Tyler's eyes flickered slightly. It seemed that he belatedly realized that he had said something wrong and his speech became a bit hurried. After all, we were deskmates for 3 years. I could tell whether your answer was right or wrong just by watching you write. I really want to know if there's anything in your life that's beyond your expectations. I muttered as I opened the folder. Sure enough, just as I thought. Shuluo hadn't made much profit in the recent 4 quarters, and there was even a loss in the last quarter. Actually, when I searched for information about Shuluo after waking up, I had guessed that Brandon seemed to be eager to prove himself and kept trying to explore new businesses, but every time, it ended in failure. I didn't want Shuluo to eventually fall completely into the hands of others, but I also didn't want to watch it deviate from the original intention of our founding and finally be ruined. I seemed to be trapped in the documents and couldn't even hear clearly what Tyler was saying. I had loved Brandon. I thought it was understandable that he fell in love with someone else while I was in a coma, and I was also willing to give my blessings. After all, no one would bet their whole life on waiting for someone who might never wake up. But now, selling the shares in my hand was equivalent to directly declaring war on Brandon. The lovers who used to love each other had become enemies, and one of them was bound to be badly hurt when it ended. President Tyler, make me an offer. I took a deep breath and closed the file. But I didn't want Brandon to be deceived either, nor did I want to watch Shuluo be destroyed. These 2 documents are worth a lot of money, right? I turned my head to look at him, and my tone became much more relaxed. Tyler was no saint. All his kindness had a price tag attached in secret, except that the payment time was uncertain. I had known this since high school. Every problem he explained to me was in exchange for me running errands for him at the school store during the lunch break. 5% of the value of the shares in your hand. Tyler handed me the contract. The money will be in your account within 24 hours. Tomorrow's shareholders meeting. You don't have to attend. Tyler completed my sentence for me. Okay. I asked Tyler to drop me off at a nearby hotel at random. After getting out of the car, the hotel staff warmly came forward to receive me. President Tyler has already made arrangements. Miss Sylvia, please follow me. Only then did I realize that Tyler had sent me to a hotel under the Tyler family. I just turned around to look for him, but the car behind me had already disappeared. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from Tyler, a thank you gift. Stay as long as you like. That night, my mother came to find me worriedly. Her eyes were red, and she must have just cried. Sylvia, your father has really gone too far this time. Clearly, you've already. She choked on the second half of her sentence. Mom, did you know long ago that Dad was having an affair? I asked her carefully. Mom nodded. I knew it when you were still in high school. For so many years, I originally planned to divorce him after you graduated from college. It's all my fault. Mom didn't have the ability to earn money. I was afraid that if I divorced, you would be wronged if you followed him, and you would have a hard life if you followed me. After you fell into a coma, I was wholeheartedly taking care of you and didn't have the heart to deal with your father. I didn't expect that woman to let her daughter, to seduce Brandon. Brandon's mental state wasn't good at that time either. I reminded him several times, but he wouldn't listen. That woman taught her daughter to be exactly like her. Everyone thought that Bianca and Brandon were a couple. Your father even blatantly helped them. Mom held my hand tightly. Sylvia, when Mom advised you to let go back then, it was because I didn't want you to forcefully hold on to Brandon. After all, a man who has changed his heart can't be held on to. Mom was afraid that you would get hurt and do something to hurt yourself. With that, Mom put her phone in front of me. She opened the photo album, which was full of pictures of Bianca and her mother. There were also 1 or 2 videos of her beside my hospital bed. These are the evidences I've taken in the past few years. If you want to fight back, they can come in handy at any time. If you still love Brandon, just pretend that what Mom said today is nonsense. My nose couldn't help but feel sour, and I threw myself into my mother's arms. I wasn't alone. I still had her. The next day, I was woken up by a phone call. It was already 12 o'clock noon. The callers were no more than a few people, Brandon, my father, and my mother. When I opened it, there was also an unexpected visitor, Tyler. I called my mother first. Sure enough, after my father found out that I had sold my shares to Tyler, he flew into a rage and was looking for me everywhere with Brandon. I didn't know how to face Brandon, and I also knew that he wouldn't listen to what I said. I called Tyler. He had called me 20 minutes ago. The call was connected quickly. Awake. You guessed right. I got up from the bed. I didn't guess. It's just that when you want to avoid something, you'll stay in bed. Don't act like you know me so well. I stretched. Who didn't want to participate in the school sports meeting every year and would sleep very late on that day? Master Tyler, why are you still bringing up such old things? It was a bit embarrassing to have old embarrassing things dug up. How's it going today? Is everything going smoothly? Very smoothly. His words were concise and gave no hint of emotion. As a thank you, I'll treat you to a meal. Ah? It's my honor to have Master Tyler personally invite me to dinner. I said in a very flattering way. 20 minutes. I'm in the room next to yours. Tyler's words startled me. Could it be that this guy was staying next to me? When I finished getting dressed and went out, I found Tyler standing beside my door. I was so scared that my heart pounded. Why are you here? I calculated that the time was about right, so I simply came out to wait. Tyler had changed into casual clothes, and his whole aura instantly became much softer. Master Tyler, what are you planning to treat me to? I won't eat anything that isn't Michelin-starred. Tyler shook his head and chuckled. Don't worry. It's 10 stars. Don't lie to me. How can Michelin have 10 stars? Tyler actually took me to a wonton noodle restaurant near our high school. In the past, Tyler often dragged me here to eat. If he couldn't come, he would ask me to run errands for him. I still remembered that when we were trying to get investment from the Tyler family, Tyler wasn't the person in charge of the Tyler family yet. At that time, he advised me to give up. I made a bet with him that if Shuluo succeeded, he would treat me to shrimp wontons and he could only watch me eat. Because he was allergic to seafood. Tyler agreed readily at that time. He said that if it succeeded, he would treat me to a seafood buffet and let me eat 2 portions. But the time to fulfill that bet was unexpectedly interrupted until now. Didn't you say you'd treat me to a seafood buffet? Tyler pursed his lips slightly, as if holding back a smile. Don't worry. There will be another meal. Shrimp wontons. Order more if it's not enough. He pushed the wontons in front of me. Sylvia. An unexpected guest pulled out a chair and sat down beside me. It was Brandon. His eyes were bloodshot and he immediately questioned me. Why did you sell your shares to him? You clearly know that I can't lose Shuluo. Tyler's gaze swept over Brandon. The shares belong to Sylvia. She's free to sell them to whoever she wants. What right do you have to question her? Shut up. The veins on Brandon's temple bulged and he leaned forward. I'm asking you, Sylvia. Your so-called willingness to let me be with Bianca, was it that you had already planned to take revenge on me in this way long ago? Brandon's tone was full of unwillingness. I've never thought of taking revenge on you. I just don't want my hard work to fall into the hands of others for nothing. You said that I clearly knew how important Shuluo was to you. Then do you know how important Shuluo is to me? Why did you allow Bianca to easily obtain my shares? The freshly made shrimp wontons were steaming, making my eyes feel sour. I just wanted to fight for some benefits for myself. Is that wrong? Or do you also think that the shares in my hand belong to Bianca just because she looks like me, so she can steal my achievements? I tried my best to suppress my volume and the sobs in my voice. Brandon looked at me with a look of surprise in his eyes. Sylvia, I never thought you'd be like this. What am I like? I smiled and asked him back. Aren't you the one who should know best what I'm like? Or do you think I'm extremely vicious now and you're just seeing my true face now? Brandon, I'll tell you today. I've never blamed you for falling in love with someone else while I was in a coma, and I never expected you to stay with me for a lifetime. You can be with anyone except Bianca. Because she doesn't really love you. All her approaches have ulterior motives. Before I could say this sentence, Brandon slammed the table and stood up. His receding figure was blurred by my tears. I could no longer hold back my tears. They slid down my cheeks and into the corners of my mouth, and the salty taste reached the bottom of my heart. He said he never thought I'd be like this. What was I supposed to be like? Was I supposed to foolishly accompany him in starting a business, invest all the money I earned into the company, block the brick for him, and finally give away the shares in my hand? Why didn't you tell him? Tyler handed me a tissue. He won't listen. Instead, he'll think that I'm deliberately slandering Bianca. Only when Bianca reveals her true face will Brandon wake up. So what are you going to do now? Bianca won't let you off. Tyler held his phone in the other hand. Bianca was crying pitifully on the screen, and it was still the couple's account of her and Brandon. It's all my fault. I'm the one who made Brandon lose Shuluo. She said that Brandon can be with anyone except me. Could you please help me tell Sister Sylvia that I beg her not to ruin Shuluo, not to ruin Brandon? I'll do anything. Soon, I was doxxed. My personal information was dug out by Bianca's crazy fans. My mobile phone number, WeChat account, and even my email address were all hacked. Except for my mother and close friends, my father and Brandon had no way to contact me at all. It wasn't that no one tried to speak up for me. Except for my mother and close friends, my father and Brandon had no way to contact me at all. It wasn't that no one tried to speak up for me. My college classmates who knew the truth and colleagues who were involved in the early establishment of Shuluo also tried, but they were instead mistaken for the paid trolls I hired and were attacked indiscriminately. I didn't want to involve more innocent people. It was time to decide the winner in this battle between Bianca and me. Bianca hadn't resigned from the company yet. It wasn't difficult for Tyler to find her phone number from the personnel files. Bianca was a bit surprised when she heard my voice. Sister Sylvia, I beg you to give Shuluo back to Brandon. He really can't live without Shuluo. President Tyler bought the shares of Shuluo from me with real money. If you want those shares, just ask him to sell them to you. Sister Sylvia, currently you and the Tyler family hold the most shares. Where can Brandon get so much money? Aren't you obviously pushing him to a dead end? Bianca still had an innocent tone. But why doesn't he have enough money? Did he use it to buy the most luxurious mansion in the best location in this city as a wedding house, or to buy a pink diamond for you, or specially invite Italian designers to customize a wedding dress for you? All these things were included in the documents Tyler gave me. The community where that house was located was a place that Brandon and I had visited before. At that time, we went to talk about cooperation with a client and accidentally got lost inside. While looking for the way out, we looked at the villas enviously. I said with emotion at that time that it would be nice if we could live there in the future. Brandon smiled and hugged me in his arms, saying that it wasn't difficult. When we got married, he would definitely let me live in this community. I thought he was joking, so I also said that I wanted the most beautiful pink diamond and a wedding dress customized by a designer specifically for me. Brandon agreed to them one by one with indulgence at that time. I just thought that he was just trying to make me happy and deliberately coaxed me. But unexpectedly, he really fulfilled them one by one, only that the heroine who married him wasn't me. Sister Sylvia, what are you talking about? Those were all done by Brandon. I didn't even know. Don't you really know? I sneered. I think you just don't know that those were actually the promises Brandon made to me before, right? There was silence on the other end of the phone for half a minute. I don't understand what you're trying to do, Sister Sylvia. But you have Tyler now, don't you? Why do you still want to take away everything from Brandon when you don't love him anymore? I'm willing to be with Brandon all the time. I love him regardless of whether he is the president of Shuluo or not. I just don't want to see him sad. So, Sister Sylvia, I beg you, please let him go. If I let him go, will you let me go? What's the meaning of you asking your fans to cyberbully me with the video you posted online? Sister Sylvia, I couldn't contact you. I just hoped that you would let Brandon go. Really? Don't you want to take everything that originally belonged to me for granted? Just like what your mother did. In terms of seniority, you should really call me sister. Sister Sylvia, I don't understand what you're saying. Then I'll send all your information to Brandon and see if he can understand. So what? Don't you think that just a few pictures can make Brandon believe you? Bianca finally dropped her disguise and had an arrogant tone. I've never seen anyone who can be so confident after interfering in someone else's relationship. Do you think I should also send Brandon the photos of you before your plastic surgery? You. Bianca's momentum immediately weakened. The information given by Tyler really opened my eyes. I even suspected that after I became a vegetative state and Shuluo got on the right track, my father and Bianca had already started planning all this. Although Bianca looked like my father just like I did, she had plastic surgery to look more like me. She entered Shuluo, took advantage of Brandon's most vulnerable moment by imitating me, and took over my life. Even after I woke up, she still tried to take away my shares. This was not a coincidence at all. It was a long-planned theft. I clicked on the video secretly taken by my mother and pressed the speakerphone button. After my mother knew that Bianca was my father's illegitimate daughter, she was worried that she would hurt me, so she secretly placed a camera in my ward. And this was one of the clips she filmed. In the video, after the nurse went out, Bianca sat beside my bed with a sinister and terrifying smile. Sister, your life is really like a stone that has fallen into a latrine, smelly and hard. Look at you, living in the ward every day and spending so much money. It would be better to save the money for me to spend. She threw the towel on my face with a look of disgust. Do you know how much pain I've suffered because of you? I was swollen like a pig's head after the surgery. At first, I had to work as a secretary, running around and imitating you until I felt like vomiting. But it won't be long. As long as you die, everything will be mine. I turned off the video. Well, does this voice sound familiar to you? How could it be? Although Bianca was shocked, she didn't panic for long. Even if you have this video, so what? As long as I firmly claim that this video is synthesized by you, both netizens and Brandon will believe me. I advise you not to waste your efforts. No one will believe you now. If you don't want to be cyberbullied, quickly get the shares back and transfer them to my name, or give me the money from selling the shares. Then I can also help you persuade Brandon to send us the wedding invitation. I smiled and didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the mobile phone that was broadcasting live. Everyone has seen it. This is the truth of the matter. Just now, Miss Bianca clearly said that she deliberately had plastic surgery to imitate my appearance to approach my ex-boyfriend, and joined forces with my father to try to cheat me out of my shares and distort the facts to guide netizens to attack me. I hope everyone can distinguish right from wrong and give me a peaceful life. Meanwhile, I will keep the replay of this live broadcast. Welcome everyone to watch it at any time. This is my first live broadcast and also the last one. Thank you all. Sylvia, you set me up? Before I could turn off the live broadcast, Bianca on the other end began to question me angrily. She realized that she had said something wrong after speaking and hung up the phone in a hurry. Amid the beeping sound, I smiled and turned off the live broadcast. Only 5 minutes after it ended, my mobile phone kept ringing. I didn't answer any of the calls. I had called Bianca with my old phone card. To have some peace and quiet, I took the phone card out. My new mobile phone also rang. It was my mother. I had already rented a house and asked her to move there first. Sylvia, I've arrived at the new home. Did everything go smoothly with your live broadcast? Everything went smoothly. Bianca has admitted everything. I guess she won't be able to stay in Shuluo anymore. As for Brandon, I'm not sure. The current Brandon is no longer the Brandon I loved. I'm not clear about the relationship between him and Bianca, and I don't want to be clear about it either. Because Bianca's couple account had a large number of fans, this incident directly became a hot search topic. The internet is like this. As long as there is a hint of gossip, it will be dug up thoroughly. Bianca revealed her true face in the live broadcast, and the information given to me by Tyler was soon dug out by netizens as well, including plastic surgery, being an illegitimate daughter, creating a persona, and so on. The official of Shuluo immediately issued a statement afterwards, dismissing Bianca, an employee with bad conduct. My mother filed for divorce from my father, and my father agreed. After all, the matter had already become widely known. As for Brandon, I saw him again 3 days later. It was raining heavily that day, and I was trapped in Tyler's office. Originally, he had invited me to talk about Shuluo. He hoped that I could stay and help him manage Shuluo. Who knew that after our conversation, it suddenly started pouring rain. By the time the rain eased a little, it was already getting late, and only a few employees who were working overtime were left in the company. The phone rang unexpectedly. Although there was no note on my new mobile phone, I recognized that it was Brandon's call at a glance. Sometimes I even thought that it would be nice if the heavy blow to my head that time could make me lose my memory. In that case, I wouldn't remember the past between Brandon and me so clearly. Whenever the wound was about to heal, memories would always cruelly tear it open again. Sylvia, it's me. I'm Brandon. His voice came from the other end of the phone, and I remained silent. Tyler beside me leaned over and reached out to press the speakerphone button. It's me, Tyler. Why is it you? Brandon was shocked. Tyler curled his lips maliciously. At this time, you should know very well why I answered the phone. The phone was hung up in a hurry. Tyler handed the phone back to me. I blocked his number for you while I was at it. Why did you say that? He already thought that I deliberately joined forces with you to stage a coup. Firstly, if I hadn't said that, he would probably keep calling you. Secondly, it's not that he thought so. It's the truth. Tyler raised his eyebrows, looking quite satisfied with his prank. If you think I've gone too far, you can call back to clarify. Tyler lowered his gaze and shrugged. I couldn't possibly call to clarify. In fact, there was no need to clarify either. It was getting late and it was still raining, so I simply hitched a ride with Tyler. Anyway, young Master Tyler didn't care about the cost of a little gas. I never expected that Brandon would come to my house. Perhaps the rain came too suddenly. He was soaked through and a small puddle of water had formed under his feet. His eyes suddenly lit up when he saw me and he trotted over to me. The temperature had dropped that day, and his nose and earlobes were red from the cold. Sylvia, you're here. The curve of his mouth was quickly suppressed and then rose again quickly. Brandon would do this when he was shy. He was like this when he confessed his love to me too, unable to hide his joy. But my heart was no longer what it used to be, just like being drenched by this autumn rain, and it couldn't burn with passion anymore. Why do you have my address? I looked at him and took 2 steps back warily. Brandon probably didn't expect my coldness and subconsciously froze for a moment. I begged Franklin, and he told me. He didn't want to see us like this either. Brandon took a step closer and tried to hold my hand, but I dodged it first. Sylvia, do we have to be enemies? Brandon looked at me helplessly. I never thought of being enemies with you. Even when you fell in love with someone else, I could pretend not to care and wish you well. But what about you? You never believed in me and even thought that I was deliberately taking revenge on you and Bianca. Brandon, you were the one who started this war. For the sake of my mother and Shuluo, I had no other choice. Brandon's dim eyes lit up. Sylvia, you still care about me, right? You're selling your shares just because you don't want Bianca to take them, right? Sylvia, I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I wasn't in a stable mental state before, so I was bewitched by her. I promise you that I love you. I looked at him coldly. The last time you held me and said these words, a few hours later, you were already feeding porridge to Bianca. Brandon, do you think I'll still believe you? Sylvia. I just didn't think clearly. He lowered his head and buried his face in the shadow. She appeared when I felt the most guilty and missed you the most. For so many years, she's been by my side. I admit that I've completely mistaken her for you and mixed up your preferences. Sylvia, but it's you that I love. It's because I loved you too much that I made such a big mistake. I'm sober now. Please give me another chance, okay? Brandon suddenly raised his head and rushed over to hug me without warning. Bang! The wet touch didn't come. Instead, there was a loud noise. Looking up, I saw Brandon lying on the ground in a mess. Tyler, who should have left, was standing beside me. Brandon looked up and stared at Tyler. His fingers supporting on the ground clenched into fists. Why are you here? Brandon asked him. Tyler glanced at him disdainfully. It's so late. She refused to stay at my place to sleep, so I followed her. Is it that hard to guess? You. A flash of pain appeared in Brandon's eyes. He looked at me unwillingly. Sylvia, you deliberately used him to make me angry, right? With that, he crawled to my feet, looked up at me, and there were water droplets sliding down his face. It was just hard to tell whether they were raindrops or tears. Sylvia, will you forgive me? Don't be angry with me anymore. When Brandon tried to reach out and grab me again, Tyler stepped on his shoulder and quickly pulled me behind him. This action undoubtedly angered Brandon. He quickly got up and punched Tyler. But he was no match for Tyler. After several moves, he didn't even touch Tyler's hair. For her sake, I won't hit you. If you're sensible, leave quickly, or I'll call the police. Tyler took out his mobile phone impatiently. Brandon's eyes passed over Tyler and fell on me, full of pleading and unwillingness. He was waiting for me to speak. Just go. I don't want things to be so ugly. It's very late. Both Tyler and I are tired. I added the last sentence deliberately. I really didn't want to be entangled with Brandon like this anymore. Brandon's eyes gradually dimmed until they were as lifeless as death. He turned around extremely slowly and walked into the rainy night step by step. Stop looking. He deliberately got himself wet to win sympathy. So childish. Tyler commented sharply behind me. I was aware of this. There were many places to take shelter from the rain in the community. He wouldn't have gotten so wet unless he deliberately stood where I could see him and got wet on purpose. In the past, when I was angry with him, he would always deliberately get hurt so that I couldn't bear to continue being angry. But now, without love, there's no heartache either. Then what about you? Why haven't you left yet? The corner of Tyler's mouth curled up slightly, and he slowly took out a hairpin and gave it to me. You left something behind. When I got into the car last night, my bag accidentally dropped, and things were scattered all over the ground. Tyler was kind enough to help me pick them up at that time. There's no need to guess. I knew he had hidden it on purpose. You clearly hid it on purpose. You're right. Tyler admitted it readily. The questions that came to my throat were all swallowed back by me. What do you want to do? I was afraid that Brandon wouldn't give up, so I came up to check. I think the latter is your real purpose. A rare bright smile appeared on Tyler's face. After so many years, you finally understood me once. Tyler, Tyler's sudden straightforwardness caught me off guard. I avoided his gaze. You know that I just ended a relationship. If I start something with you so easily, the purpose would be nothing but to use you to heal my wounds. Sorry. Sorry for what? Tyler looked relaxed, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. I do have something to ask you. It's about my grandfather. Your grandfather? Yes. Tyler nodded. I've been hesitating whether to ask you for help about this matter. My grandfather isn't in good health. He said that his only regret now is that he hasn't seen me get married, so I want to ask you to help me put on a show. Tyler put away his smile, and his tone became sincere. The rain was still pattering down. The tall figure in front of me seemed a bit lonely at this moment. I knew how important Tyler's grandfather was to him. Tyler's parents died in a car accident, and he was the only survivor. Tyler's grandfather had been in most of Tyler's life. He was Tyler's only relative. Whether it was for this reason or because of Tyler's help to me after I woke up, I had no reason to refuse him. How do you want me to help? Just accompany me to have meals with Grandpa usually. It won't take up too much of your time. Tyler smiled. Okay. I breathed a sigh of relief. By the way, here's this for you. With that, a shadow fell in front of me, and the broken hair on my head was gently brushed aside by something warm. Goodbye. Goodbye. I watched his receding figure and subconsciously reached out to touch the hairpin on my head. I never expected that Tyler's goodbye meant see you tomorrow. I received a call as soon as I got up. When I opened the door, I saw a beautifully packaged box, but I hadn't shopped online recently. There was also a card on the box, which read, I'll pick you up at 11 o'clock to accompany Grandpa for lunch. I opened it and found a long black dress. I tried it on and found that the size was just right and it was also very warm. Tyler arrived on time. As soon as I got to the parking lot, I saw the familiar license plate. Tyler's eyes were smiling, his eyes twinkling from time to time, and they seemed to have a certain warmth which made people's faces feel hot. Is there something on my face? Tyler shook his head. Why do you ask? Then why are you looking at me like that? Suddenly, I remembered that on the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, he had looked at me with the same eyes. Just surprised that the size I picked fits you so well. Actually, you don't have to buy me clothes. You can't buy me clothes every time we have a meal, right? Tyler's eyebrow slightly curved. Grandpa asked me to buy it for you. He likes you very much. He still remembers me? I had met Tyler's grandfather a few times in high school. During that period, Tyler's state was very strange, and he often asked for leave. The head teacher naturally didn't want an excellent student like Tyler to perform abnormally in the college entrance examination, so he asked me to take pictures of the exercise questions for Tyler. Once, I happened to meet Tyler's grandfather when he came to the school, and I was the one who packed Tyler's books and handed them to him. I didn't expect that the old man remembered me after several encounters. It was really a kind of fate. You're quite obedient. Tyler glanced at me. I just don't want him to say that I'm single because I'm stingy. Tyler's grandfather looked much older than before, but when he saw me and Tyler, he immediately became much more energetic and kept urging me to sit beside him. Back then, I told the head teacher that you were a nice child. It's just that this naughty boy didn't live up to expectations and made you suffer so many grievances with that Brandon. Tyler's grandfather said, looking at Tyler with a bit of reproach in his eyes. Back then? I looked at Tyler in confusion. Tyler shrugged. The old man had planned it long ago. I only found out later. It's all because you were always flirting around and became famous in the whole school for receiving love letters. When you graduated, your head teacher even came to me and told me to ask you to have a serious relationship in the future. I said at that time that Sylvia was a nice child. It must be because you had so many admirers that Sylvia didn't feel secure and didn't choose you. Tyler looked at me. Tell me yourself, how many letters did you put in? I thought it was funny to watch the grandfather and grandson bickering, so I deliberately teased Tyler. Otherwise, where do you think the milk and sandwiches that fed you during every big break came from? Look, what did I say? You can't win a girl's heart if you're too stingy. Tyler's grandfather laughed at Tyler. Yeah, Grandpa. When he bought my shares, he even cut 5% off the price. Do you think I should still date him? I also joined in the fun. Tyler's grandfather tapped his cane twice and pretended to be serious. You even bargained with the price of your future wife? Do you want to be alone for the rest of your life? After that, the old man looked at me cheerfully again. Don't worry, Grandpa will make up the price difference for you later. I won't let you suffer losses. Grandpa. Tyler helplessly put his hand on his forehead. After the meal, Tyler sent me home. Grandpa likes you very much. He hopes you can come over every day. If I go every day, I can get a red envelope worth 5% of the shares. Why not? Then I have to earn more money. Otherwise, I really can't afford you as my girlfriend. Tyler shook his head and smiled. Fake girlfriend. He quickly corrected it, his eyes hastily observing my expression. See you tomorrow, fake boyfriend. I didn't think much about it. I got out of the car and took the elevator upstairs. I don't know why, but I felt that someone was watching me all day today. Sure enough, when I opened the door, I saw a shadow approaching me from the corner of my eye. Just as I was about to turn around, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my back and faintly felt a liquid being injected into my body. I met Bianca's vicious gaze head-on. Long time no see, sister. My legs gradually became weak, my eyelids became heavy, and Bianca's figure in front of me seemed to split into several. What do you want? I held onto the door to barely keep myself standing. You made me what I am now, and you're asking me? Bianca sneered. If it wasn't for you, would I have been laughed at for not having a father since I was a child? If it wasn't for you, how could he have missed my parents' meetings and my graduation ceremony? Bianca excitedly pushed me, and my back suddenly hit the doorknob. Because of the effect of the anesthetic, I didn't feel much pain. If you hadn't woken up suddenly, how could Brandon stop loving me? How could I be kicked out of Shuluo? You've ruined my life, do you know that? Now everyone is laughing at me. Bianca raised her hand. I wanted to block it, but my hands wouldn't listen to me at all. Slap. Didn't you feel so smug that day? You deliberately set me up and broadcast it live. Why are you in such a pitiful state today? Bianca looked at me smugly. She grabbed my collar and said word by word, I really regret that I didn't take action when you were lying in the hospital bed before. But it's not too late now. Don't worry. With the anesthetic, you won't feel pain when you die. As long as you're dead, everything of yours will still be mine. Brandon will definitely come back to me. I'm afraid. I struggled to hold myself up to finish my sentence. You're overthinking it. Bianca reached out and pinched my jaw, still being stubborn when death is at hand. I'll give you this line too. Just as Bianca was about to continue her attack, a hand stopped her. The owner of the hand was Tyler standing behind her. Bianca suddenly turned around and looked at Tyler behind her in horror. Why are you here? I should be the one asking you that. Tyler pulled Bianca away from me and quickly came to support me who was about to fall to the ground. Are you okay? Tyler saw the syringe on the ground and frowned deeply. I didn't even have the strength to shake my head. I could only barely make the shape of I'm okay with my lips. Seeing this, Bianca panicked and tried to climb up from the ground and escape. Unexpectedly, as soon as she opened the door of the fire escape, she bumped into two policemen head-on. It's her. She attempted murder deliberately. Tyler exchanged a glance with the policeman. Miss, please assist us in going back for investigation. Bianca tried to escape from the side while the policemen weren't paying attention, but she failed. In the end, she was directly handcuffed and taken to the police station. When I woke up in the hospital, my mother's eyes were red from crying beside the bed. And there were also two unexpected visitors standing in front of the bed, Bianca's mother and my father. Presumably, they came for Bianca. Sylvia, you've finally woken up. Mom let out a sigh of relief. It was just an anesthetic. I'm okay, Mom. I comforted her. Since you're okay, go to the police station and explain it clearly as soon as possible. Bianca's mother snorted and nudged my father with her elbow. Yes. Anyway, no substantial harm has been done. Now Bianca is already miserable enough. Why? Why what? Mom interrupted him. If Sylvia hadn't been so lucky, we wouldn't even know if she was alive or dead now. I've endured you two for a long time before. And you? What did you take Sylvia for? Enough. Dad said impatiently, isn't Sylvia fine now? Exactly. Bianca's mother chimed in, if something happens to my daughter, your daughter won't get away with it either. You too. I held Mom's hand. Mom, don't argue with mad dogs. Even if you win the argument, it's meaningless. Who are you talking about? Bianca's mother rushed in front of me. Whoever barks at me. I looked at the couple making a scene in front of me and just found it funny. Your daughter was just caught for attempted murder, and you two came to threaten me right after. You're really providing evidence for me. I smiled as I watched them fuming but not daring to say a word. The door of the ward was pushed open, putting an end to the argument. It was the policeman. They asked me to go back to the police station to assist with the investigation. Mom took the opportunity to tell them about how Dad and Bianca's mother threatened me. Their momentum immediately weakened a lot. In the end, they were also invited back to the police station to assist with the investigation. Although Bianca managed to turn off the surveillance cameras in the community on the floor where my home was located, she didn't know that there was also a surveillance camera installed at my door. Moreover, actually, I had already seen her sneaking around and following me through the rearview mirror. Before getting out of the car and going upstairs, I had already asked Tyler to follow me upstairs and kept the call on with him throughout the process. Both the surveillance footage and the phone recording clearly recorded everything Bianca did to me. With conclusive evidence, this added another criminal charge to her already ruined life. This was also my biggest revenge on her. Since she was so eager to get rid of me, I would make sure that she would never have that chance again. After the last live broadcast that exposed Bianca's true face, more past events about me and Brandon were revealed. Former employees also came forward one after another to speak up and support me. The fact that Brandon borrowed money from me to start Shuluo was also dug out. The couple's account of him and Bianca had been cancelled, and there were a lot of curses under Brandon's public account. The next time I saw Brandon was on the first day I went to work at Shuluo. He was waiting for me specifically in my office. His eyes were bloodshot. Although he was neatly dressed, his whole posture revealed a heavy sense of exhaustion. "Sylvia, long time no see. How have you been recently?" He carefully started a conversation with me. "Quite well. Regarding Bianca's matter, if you're here to plead for her, then I can only—" No, Sylvia. I'm not here because of her. I just wanted to see you." Brandon hurriedly took out a document. "I'm relieved to see that you're okay. Then can you leave now? Regarding work matters, if necessary, I'll talk to you about them." The scene of Brandon's behavior that night was still vivid in my mind. I really didn't want to bring emotional issues to work, especially since it was my first day at work. "Don't worry. I won't show up at Shuluo again. Today Tyler asked me to resign on the grounds that I had seriously affected the company's image. If you don't want to see me, this will be the last time I come to see you." Brandon lowered his head, and his eyelids covered the sadness in his eyes. He put the document on the table. "If there's no problem, just sign it." I opened the document in confusion. It was a share transfer agreement. "What you mean by this?" Brandon smiled calmly. "It was originally yours. I'm just returning it to its rightful owner. You. Sylvia, without you, there would be no Shuluo today, nor the me today. Actually, everything I have should be yours. I was too weak-willed and was bewitched by Bianca. I almost—" He held back the tears in his eyes with great effort. "I almost really never got to see you again. Tyler was right. All your pain was caused by me. If I stay at Shuluo, it will only accelerate its downfall. Shuluo is also your hard work. With you here, I can rest assured. Actually, you don't have to do this. I did those things in the past willingly. I never thought of getting them back." Brandon's doing this made me feel a bit uncomfortable instead. "You've already sold your shares to Tyler. Having some shares will make you more confident when there are differences in the future." Brandon seemed to have predicted my next move. He put his hands behind his back and refused to take the document. "I just want to do something for you. Please don't reject me, Sylvia." Brandon looked at me pleadingly, as if the sadness would spill out along with his tears in the next moment. "I'll sell all my real estate under my name and transfer the money to you." "Brandon, you earned all these by yourself over the years. You don't need to give them to me, and I won't accept them either." I interrupted him. "If you want to exchange these for my sympathy and hope that I'll come back to you, I advise you to give up. I don't want to have some unnecessary sense of guilt because of this either. Sylvia, I just want to do something for you." Brandon still wouldn't give up. "If you really care about her, then please put away your unnecessary sympathy." Tyler walked straight over and stood beside me. "First, she doesn't lack shares. She just authorized me to manage the shares of Shuluo under her name, so you can rest assured about the first point. Second, she's with me now. Our Tyler family doesn't lack your little property. Please take it back." Brandon fell completely silent. He kept his head down, his spine slightly bent, and all his arrogance gone. After about a minute, he slowly said, "Okay." The moment Brandon closed the door, I suddenly felt completely relaxed. He probably won't come to see me again. Thank you. You could even come up with the idea of being authorized to manage the shares under my name. I nudged Tyler. "I didn't expect you to be so good at lying." "I'm not lying. It's the truth." Tyler glanced at me, his expression serious. "Ah? Then why did you transfer money to me?" I originally thought Tyler was a shrewd capitalist, but in the end, I seem to have taken all the advantages. Grandpa said that being too stingy would make it hard to find a girlfriend. Tyler winked at me. You said you wanted to know if there was anything beyond my expectations. Actually, there aren't many. It's just my parents' car accident and you. His words fell heavily on my heart. I looked at him, tried several times to speak but didn't know what to say. Finally, after I had carefully thought about what to say, he preempted me again and said, "Don't tell me that it's not worth doing this. I know you also want to say that agreeing rashly now definitely doesn't mean you really like me, but you just want to find someone to heal your wounds. Sylvia, I don't care and I can wait. I hope you can give me, this fake boyfriend, a chance to become a real one." He was solemn and sincere, making it hard to refuse. I took a deep breath. "Then let's start with what dishes we should make for Grandpa tonight." I smiled and caught Tyler's gaze. "What does Grandpa like to eat?" "He'll like whatever you make. No one can predict what the future will be like. Having finally survived a storm, will he be the one who accompanies me to see the rainbow? Perhaps time will give me the answer."